I've covered several overwhelming FNAF games on my channel before, and I'm sure I'll cover many more in the future. Today is no different. I've recently stumbled across a fan game dev by the name of Solar Neon, responsible for Late Shift at Nintendo World, which is in a video I've made recently with a very good song along with it. Well, call me surprised when I found out that Solar has actually been working on an entire series of FNAF games, and that 2 of the 6 of them have already been released. Knowing that, I couldn't help myself but get sucked right in, and now I'm going to force you to be sucked in as well. Today, we're going to be talking about Swing Shift at Farley's, a FNAF fan game with some of the darkest and most sinister storytelling I've ever seen. Before we start talking about the actual gameplay loop this game has to offer, I first want to talk about the stylistic choices of this game. Something I noticed is that Swing Shift at Farley's really feels like FNAF 1. A lot of games try to replicate the style and feel of FNAF 1, but I honestly don't think many are capable of doing it. Farley's is definitely one of them. The overall look and feel of the game really reminds me of the original Five Nights at Freddy's, which makes the game feel nostalgic. I love it. Anyways, moving on to talking about Night 1. There is plenty to talk about. Look at the length of the video. Again, the person that made this game also made Late Shift at Nintendo World, so you know we're about to see some of the most creative shit you've ever seen in your entire life. To start, there are a lot of places you're able to move, but before we go down the list talking about them, describing the doors is very important. Swing Shift at Farley's doesn't use a typical power system, which I love. It makes my dick not feel like it's on fire. However, the doors do have their own type of power system involved. When a door is closed, the door's fuse will quickly decrease. If it empties completely, then obviously the door will be forced open. So that bodes the question, what the fuck are we going to do about that? Very epic answer, I will say, and this brings up probably my favorite mechanic. As I said, there are multiple rooms you can go to from the office. Turning to the left door, you can turn once more and go to some weird back room area. I think this is a hallway. Then, turning once more, you can go to a storage room. Inside of this storage room, you can grab a new fuse. But of course, it's not just as simple as grabbing the fuse, as there is a minigame you have to complete first. A bar will appear at the bottom of your screen and an arrow will slide back and forth. You have to time and click when the arrow is in the middle of the bar 3 times in a row for you to be able to pull out the fuse. I guess we have to really put our backs into picking up this fuse that probably weighs as much as all of the food in your mom's fridge combined. Get it? Because a fuse is very light and your mom's fridge is empty because she ate it all? Yeah, you got it. Directly behind you while looking at the camera monitor is where your fuse box is located. You can remove an empty fuse and replace it with a new one you grabbed. However, the fuse has to be empty before you can replace it. So this will lead to you having to forcefully make your door run out of power at times. But that will make more sense once we start talking about the actual threats this night introduces. Speaking of which, let's do that now. Night 1 only introduces 2 threats. However, they both go on to serve a very important purpose. So let's talk about Basil first. Basil is this weird fucking dog thing. His goal is to attack your left door. He will make his way through the cameras and eventually make it to your door. However, something interesting you'll notice about Basil and your hallways for that matter is that they have no lights. So you won't actually be able to see Basil at your door, nor does he make a sound cue informing you he's there. So that poses the question. How are you supposed to know he's there? Something about Basil, and every animatronic in this game, is that unlike characters from some other FNAF games, they will never move backwards. So once Basil gets to his final camera before attacking, once he leaves that camera, you know for a fact he's at your door and you need to close it. This leads to you needing to constantly watch the cameras to track the characters, something I've noticed a lot of other FNAF games are unable to do without adding a music box or finding them on the cameras mechanic. See, fellow game devs, this game is proof that you can find an interesting way to use the cameras that isn't those 2 things. Basil will bang on the door when he leaves so you can open it again. In general, 1 fuse usually lasts about 2 attacks from characters before you should let it run out and replace it. Charlie is the next character introduced, and she does literally the exact same thing as Basil, except she attacks your right door. Not much more to say about her. Night 2 introduces 2 new threats, each of them doing something different, adding a lot more stress to this game. It's during this night I noticed just how hard this game was truly going to get throughout the later nights. Because even just on night 2, you're already getting dogpiled, and the reflexes and balancing skills you'll need drastically increase. The first and most recognizable threat added is Florence. He is the Foxy equivalent of this game. He is in fucking jail. No, I'm not kidding. He's literally behind bars. Throughout the night, he'll make his way through several phases before bum rushing your office like your mom bum rushed the cafeteria in her school years, canonically revealing that she's had this terrible eating habit all her life. Of course, watching him on the cameras will slow him down, but with several other characters that will require you to also constantly be watching them, it's safe to say that you won't be stalling him nearly as much as you can stall Foxy, as you do actually have to be looking at him. Unlike Foxy, Florence can attack whichever door he wants. And also, as far as I'm aware, there's no way to force his attack to happen earlier. With Foxy, you could check the left hall, but there doesn't appear to be an equivalent for Florence. What you'll have to do is listen to hear which side his footsteps come on and close the respective door. This brings up a synergy with Basil and Charlie. As I said earlier, each fuse has enough power to block 2 attacks, maybe 3 if you cut it really close, which I wouldn't recommend. So having Florence attack a door that only has 1 attack left, and then noticing that Basil or Charlie is about to attack that door will really get your blood pressure to rise as you quickly whip around to do that quick time event minigame to get a new fuse. I love the stress this character brings, I can't lie. The final threat this night introduces is Dominic. He brings on an entire new mechanic into this game. In your office, you'll now see that you're able to look up. Doing so, you'll find a vent. Hooray! I can't wait to see what this asshole is about to do. Dominic appears in the same camera as Florence. When he decides he's going to try to get to you, he will move to the back room. On this back room camera, you will see a new pop-up at the bottom. It's a heater for the vent. I'm sure you can see where this is going. When Dominic leaves this backroom camera, it means he has just entered your vent. However, that doesn't mean you should blast the vent just yet, as after you use the heater, you'll have to wait for it to cool down. And just because Dominic is in your vents doesn't mean he'll be combated by the heater just yet. This is the point in time where you'll need to constantly check the vent above you to see if you can hear him banging around inside of them. If you don't hear him, don't blast him. When you do hear the banging, this is when you should go to the camera, charge up the heater, and activate it. You do have to be looking at the vent to hear the banging, so don't think you can just avoid looking up, because unfortunately, you cannot. Night 3 is a doozy, adding 1 new threat that in turn adds 1 new mechanic, enough to make everyone's urethra begin to leak blood. So let's talk about her. The threat that Night 3 introduces is Whitney, and Whitney introduces your flashlight. I bet you can already guess what she's going to do. Whitney has 3 avenues she can attack you from: your left door, your right door, and the vent above you. She will wander around the cameras and eventually pick one to attack. When she is at one of those locations, you have to spam your flashlight at her until she goes away. However, something you may have wondered, and no, this flashlight does not work how most FNAF flashlights tend to, as this one is much worse. The rate at which the battery drains from this flashlight is a lunacy. So, to compensate, you're able to charge it back up. But how do you do this, you might ask? Well, on the cameras, you will see a new pop-up. Using this pop-up, you can slowly recharge your flashlight. The problem with this? Obviously, aside from the fact that it's just a fucking music box, which I hate, is that the camera in which this pop-up is on teleports to a random camera whenever it damn well pleases. Did you just fucking hear me? The music box mechanic, aka my second least favorite mechanic of all time, is a find them on the camera mechanic, aka my number 1 least favorite mechanic of all time. This fucking charging flashlight pop-up is the combination of my 2 least favorite things, and they happen at the same goddamn time. You can't make this shit up, bro. When I first saw this, my penis instantly wilted like a flower and died. Fuck me. And that's not even the end of it, as Whitney behaves in the same way as Charlie and Basil. There is no sound cue for when she arrives at any of the 3 places she can arrive, and you also can't tell if she's there without flashing your light, which I've already explained drains way too quickly for you to just be flashing it all willy-nilly. So you have to track her exactly how you have to track Charlie and Basil. There's not even a crazy amount of characters, yet this is quickly becoming one of the most stressful FNAF games I've ever played. And don't even get me started started on how stressful this game gets when you go about replacing your fuses. You will be spending a majority of your time staring at the cameras, especially on later nights when the characters are moving pretty quickly. So having to spend a fuck ton of time grabbing the fuse and replacing it will guarantee that you lose track of literally every character you were watching. It's so stressful, and while I'm not a huge fan of being stressed out, if you could believe that, I do still think it's really cool how this game is able to pull that off. Night 4, and again, just as Five Nights at Freddy's did, Night 4 introduces the big bad antagonist himself, Farley. And let me tell you, he's honestly probably the least threatening character this game's seen so far, with a mechanic that makes him sound a lot scarier than he really is. Let's talk about it. Farley works in the exact same way as Charlie. The goal is to make it to your right door. However, the big catch with Farley is that you can't see him on your cameras. And of course, we already know we can't see door characters at our door. So how do we know where Farley is? Well, every time that Farley moves, he will laugh, which by the way, if you were curious, is just FNAF 1 Freddy's laugh. You will have to keep track throughout the night of how many times Farley laughs, as every fifth laugh will signal that Farley is now at your right door and that you need to close it. And this is where this game introduces a mechanic so cool, yet so useless. In your office, you will now see you have a little notepad. Using this notepad, you will be able to leave little tally marks. Now, why would you need to leave little tally marks? Well, this is this game's way of letting you keep track of how many times Farley has moved so you don't have to just remember. Every time you hear him laugh, open your notepad and mark a line. Once you deal with his attack, switch to your eraser, erase it, and start again. I think this is super cute and unique. I've never seen a FNAF game do something like this before, as most would probably prefer you just remember it yourself because that's way more AIDS-inducing. However, the way the rest of this game controls does bring up an issue with this otherwise awesome mechanic. I have 2 hands, in case you weren't aware, and on my 2 hands, 5 fingers are attached each. What's stopping me from counting Farley's movements on my hand? Doing this is actually a much better choice in my opinion, since it eliminates the time it would otherwise take to drop the camera, open the notebook, mark it down, close the notebook, and then reopen the camera. I think there's a very simple way to solve this problem and further encourage the player to actually use the notebook. All you would have to do is make another mechanic use a keybind. For example, instead of Whitney and the QuickTime event to get the fuse being controlled by the mouse, why not bind both of those systems to your control key? That way the player will have one hand on the mouse and the other on the keyboard most of the night, making it so that using the in-game notepad would make much more sense since you wouldn't have that open hand. I think the idea of the notepad is super nice, and while totally unnecessary, I think if it was encouraged in a more natural way, it would actually be one of the most interesting mechanics I've ever seen in one of these FNAF fan games. But as it exists right now, I just don't see any real reason to use it. Night 5 doesn't have a whole lot to talk about, really just being a much more stressful version of Night 4. On my playthrough, which by the way you can watch over on my second channel, Dexter Black, there was a point where I had to pretty much get 2 fuses in a row because I got unlucky with attacks. Honestly, one of the most stressful moments I've ever had playing a FNAF game. It was so cool. One interesting thing I do want to talk about on this night is the lack of a phone call. Just like FNAF 1, on Night 4, the phone guy gets beamed out of existence by an enemy. On Night 5, if you check the back room, you can see what I can only assume to be the phone guy with his head on an endoskeleton body. If there's one thing about Solar, the developer of this game, she does not hold back on the shock value of her games. That's what I love so much about them. Night 6 time, here we are. Spoiler alert, there's pretty much nothing to talk about, except 2 things. To start, there's no new threat. Night 6 is just a harder version of Night 5. However, if you look in the back room, you'll notice that the corpse is now missing. And this time around, we actually get a phone call. I'm not going to explain it because I literally can't, so just take a listen. Now you might be asking, Dexter, what the fuck was that and why did you even show it to me? Well, dear viewer, if you reverse it, you'll hear the following, which I've added captions to. those of you wondering what any of that means, at the time of writing, I have no idea. And by the way, that inaudible line, I'm gonna need your guys' help with that. Let me know what you think it means. I even reached out to the game's creator, and even she told me that she forgot what the line said. So that's just awesome. But I'm not quite done talking about this game just yet. No, I found something interesting hidden inside of the game. On camera 9, there is a 1 in 10,000 chance for a character by the name of Midas to appear, acting as this game's Golden Freddy, even using the same laugh and hallucination sound as him. He enters your office and his jump scare plays. I'll just let you see it for yourself. So yeah, that's disturbing. As mentioned, that character's name is Midas. I have no idea who this character is supposed to be. However, I do know that we will be finding out, as Solar Neon plans on creating 6 games in the Farley series, and I'm totally looking forward to them. There are still a few more secrets I was able to uncover. In the room where you grab a new fuse box, you'll notice a stack of papers on the ground. Upon picking the papers up, you will see one of the following 3 papers. The first shows a wanted poster for a man inside of what appears to be a bunny costume. It's only a police sketch, but we can see they're wanted for murder. The second paper reads, "Bodies found in local river." In a shocking turn of events, the body of missing boy Thomas Fiver has been found under a bridge in Shantytown. According to the Utah Police Department, Thomas's body was stuffed inside a garbage bag with his head removed. The head has still not been recovered. A note addressed to the police was also found with Thomas's body, written by the Guillotine killer. This has been revealed to be his 3rd victim. The Guillotine killer, possibly giving a name to the killer in the previous paper, obviously being called that name for decapitating his victims. Another kid killer. Fantastic, but what did we expect, I suppose? And victim number 3. I wonder how many there are in total. The 3rd paper reads, 6 children now reported missing. Over the coming weeks, 6 children have vanished in Shantytown, Utah. While 2 of the missing children have no leads, it is believed that they are further victims of the infamous Guillotine killer. Utah Police Chief Edward Cal has stated that they are expecting letters from the killer soon, potentially tying the 2 other children to his spree. Police are hoping to apprehend the killer soon. Well, that answers my question. 6 children this time around. Quite the hefty number, but nothing compared to my 12, but that's not important. What is important is that I lied and there's actually 1 other paper to be found. However, the only way you can get it is if you've been attacked by Midas. So, 1 in 10,000. Your chances aren't great, but lucky you, I'll just show you what the paper is. So it appears Midas came from another restaurant by the name of Midas's Galactic Pizza Palace. Also on this paper, you can see some possible other names for this character, being able to make out Mike, Monty, and Max. As you can tell, this is a napkin, clearly showing that this was a very early idea for a restaurant, even having multiple food ideas like burger and barbecue before settling on pizza, apparently stating that burgers are, quote, too easy to fuck up. And then of course, the sketch of Midas with his absolutely fucking massive veiny head. Disgusting, by the way. So, with the 5 other confirmed games on the way, there's still a lot to unravel this time. And you better believe I'll be here to cover it when it comes around. But as far as I'm aware, that's all Swing Shift at Farley's has to offer. Overall, I think this game is easily one of the most creative pieces of fan game work I've ever seen. Solar Neon is so open to trying new and unique things, and I love that. I'm super looking forward to the other 5 games, and I can't wait to cover them on Dexter Black, and of course, over on this channel. Hold up, guys! As I was working on this video, the 2nd game in the Farley series, Swing Shift at Farley's Jr., actually released. And I thought, well, why not add that game to this video as well? So instead of ending the video right here where I was about to, let's go ahead and jump into Swing Shift at Farley's Jr. So, this is kind of awkward, isn't it? I bet you were getting ready to click off the video and now we have a whole nother game to cover. Well, be grateful, I guess. Farley's Jr. starts with a very FNAF 2 style opening. We're sitting in the POV of who I can only assume to be Farley. We can look left and right and see Basil and Charlie accompanying us. Shortly after the minigame ends, we're booted to the main menu where we can see the toy animatronics. What the fuck? Like, these things literally look like the FNAF characters, but rest assured, they are not. Upon starting the game, we're greeted by a newspaper stating that this time around we aren't monitoring a restaurant, but an entire mall. Awesome. That doesn't sound like there's about to be a metric fuck ton of characters, now does it? Night 1 has a phone call that's like 5 fucking minutes long, and I'm not going to waste my time talking about it. It's your typical Night 1 bullshit, and he explains the characters we'll have to deal with. But of course, if I just let him do that, then I wouldn't really have a job, now would I? So let's start by talking about the tools at our disposal, because there are a hell of a lot more this time around. To start, let's get the obvious out of the way. We have a Farley mask that we can use. However, you may notice the 4 buttons inside of this mask. Don't worry, we'll talk about them in a bit. You can also use your camera to flash the hallway in front of you for a short period of time. However, every time you do, you'll lose 1 film reel. Throughout the cameras, you can find film reels lying around and pick them up. Also in the cameras, you can flash and hold your light on them so that you can actually see, which is very nice. You may also notice music box symbols on a good majority of the cameras. Don't worry, we will also talk about that in a bit. But that's really it in terms of mechanics that actually matter at this point in time, which means we can move on to talking about the threats this night introduces. Night 1 introduces a whopping 4 threats, already matching pretty much the entire crew of the first game, so this is about to get scary. The first ones we'll talk about are Basil Jr. and Charlie Jr., these being the toy variants of the originals. The reason I mentioned talking about both of them is because they both literally do the exact same thing, so no point in talking about them individually. If you couldn't guess because you have a brain deficiency, their goal is to make it to your office through the big hallway in front of you. Since this hallway in front of you is so dark, you won't actually be able to see them if they're there. However, there are 2 things you can do to verify if they are. To start, you can obviously flash the hallway with your camera and check. However, if you don't want to waste a film reel, there is another way. Characters in Farley's Jr. will not move backwards, so once they make it to the hallway camera, if you ever see them leave that camera, that guarantees they'll be in your hallway. So once you know they're in your hallway, all you have to do is put your mask on, except, as I'm sure you could have guessed, the buttons don't work like a normal FNAF mask. Upon a character entering your office, their eyes will glow 1 of 4 colors. Depending on which color they are is which color you'll have to press inside of the mask. Once you do this, their eyes will switch to another color. Repeat this process until you've pressed 4 buttons and they will finally leave your office. I don't think I need to explain to you how fucking awesome this is. Solar Neon was able to take one of the most overused FNAF mechanics of all time and add a twist to it that makes it feel new. Does it make a whole lot of sense? No, not really, but it's still really fucking awesome and I love it. The next threat this night introduces is Farley Jr. He works in the exact same way as Basil and Charlie Jr., but with one very frustrating difference. Remember how in the first game Farley would hide in your blind spots? Yeah? Well, Farley Jr. does the exact same thing, except this time around, he doesn't make sound cues when he moves. So that brings up the very appropriate question, how the hell are you supposed to know where he is? Fantastic question that is. If you look at your cameras, you'll notice a large tracker button at the top. Whenever you click that tracker, it will show you which camera Farley Jr. is currently in. However, every time you use the tracker, you have to wait an entire century to be able to use it again. This is literally the only way to tell where Farley Jr. is, so you'll have to get pretty lucky with your timings of this, especially on later nights. With the juniors out of the way, we can move on to the final threat that Night 1 introduces, that being the marionette. Oh boy, I promise you this thing is way worse than you could ever imagine. Of course, this marionette uses a music box mechanic. However, the music box is located on the desk in your office, so you don't have to open your cameras to use it, which I honestly thought was great. But is there a catch? Are you retarded? Of course there's a catch. There's always a catch. The marionette can move throughout the night. The way she moves? Take a fucking guess. Ah, exactly! At random, she'll make a sound cue signifying that she's teleported to a random camera. Another find them on the camera mechanic mixed with a music box mechanic. All right, fine. I've liked everything Solar Neon has done so far. Maybe if I look deep inside my cold, dead heart, I can find it in me to look past this. Maybe. When the marionette moves, you'll have to find which camera she went to and toggle the music box to said camera using the music box button I mentioned earlier. So while yes, you can wind it from your office, you're still not free of the worst fucking mechanic ever thought of by man. So, that was a lot to introduce in one night, and we've still got 4 or 5 more of these to go. To discover how bad it's going to get, stick around, because I get the really funny feeling that the further we jump into this game, the further my sanity is going to split. Oh my god. I don't even know what to say. Here we are on night 2, and this night is really going to show just how fucking difficult this game is about to be. This night introduces several new threats, all of which make me want to stitch my asshole shut so that I can never shit again. Let's waste no time and start talking about them. Tonight introduces the withered characters, literally every single one of them. Well, except for one, but we'll talk about that asshole a little bit later. To start, let's talk about Withered Basil and Withered Charlie. I'm going to talk about these two together because just like their junior variants, they both fundamentally do the same thing. On night 2, you'll notice in your office you can now pull 2 gates closed on both sides of you. These gates are important for these 2 threats. Withered Basil and Charlie's goal is to get to your office through these gates. Basil will attack the left and Charlie will attack the right. Just like seemingly every other character in this game, you won't be able to see these 2 while they're at your doors, so you'll have to track them on the camera to be able to tell when they've disappeared to them. Once you know they're at your door, close their respective gates and wait to hear them hobble away. You know when I said their goal is to attack these doors? Well, I kind of lied because they both have one other form of attack, that being the hallway in front of you. Both characters will appear in the hallway camera. When they disappear, they will do one of 2 things. The first will be moving to a side camera to make their way to their gate. The other will be moving to your hallway just like the juniors do. When you know they're in your hallway, all you have to do is flash them and they'll go away. These 2 characters alone already add a bunch of stress to this gameplay loop, especially with them being able to attack in more than one way. But we're still not done. We have yet to talk about the final threat this night introduces, the Jailhound. Jailhound is an incredibly frustrating character, mainly because he forces you to use 2 means of defense against him, both draining a crucial resource and wasting a lot of time. Jailhound can only attack through your main hallway. You'll know he's there because thankfully he'll start talking to let you know that he is there. The first thing you'll need to do is flash him, using up one of your film reels. Then, and only after you flash him, must you put your mask on. If you put the mask on beforehand, he'll kill you. This is explained by the flash disorienting him enough for the mask to fool him. Pretty interesting explanation, I will admit. Once you put the mask on, he'll enter your office for a short period and leave. Unlike the juniors, you do not have to play the Simon Says minigame inside of the mask. So yeah, a metric shitload of stuff thrown on top of you on only the second night of the game. And let me give you a little spoiler. There's a lot more characters that are going to be added to this loop. And with each one, years of my life are plucked away like nose hairs. I only want to die a lot, guys, don't worry. But I'm not quite ready to move on to night 3, as during my playthrough of night 2, which you can see over on my second channel, Dexter Black, I of course died a few times trying to beat night 2 as I got used to everything. One of those times that I died, I actually got thrown into a death minigame. So let's talk about that. In this minigame, we play as a girl named Crystal. We go to the house of a man named Mr. Martinez, which, judging solely based on the color of his dialogue tech, I'm going to assume he's this game's William Afton. Crystal asks if Terrence, who I can only assume to be his son, is around, as he hasn't been answering messages. Martinez says he's been locked inside of his room after what I can only assume to be a supposed incident. Crystal apologizes about someone named Toby, and at this point, we're not totally sure who that is. Martinez allows Crystal inside to go see Terrence, but when she goes to his room, Martinez is seen pulling out a syringe and following after her, clearly showing that he's about to do something terrible. The only question we'll be left with now is why, and who is Crystal? But with that, we're ready to move on to night 3. With night 3 coming along, we have even more characters thrown onto our shoulders, and I'm really not excited for it. We have another duo group of attackers that pretty much do the exact same thing. So let's talk about them first. These 2 characters are Balloon Boy and JJ. Yeah, that's right. Solar made JJ an actual threat in this game rather than just the Easter egg that she is in FNAF 2. Let's talk about Balloon Boy first. He will make his way to your left gate. Of course, like every other character, you won't be able to see him in your doorway. However, you won't have to watch him on the cameras either, as every time he moves, he'll make a sound cue. And the second sound cue he makes will signal that he's at your gate, and that you either need to close it or put your mask on. Either will make him go away. JJ is identical, except she attacks the right gate instead. Now, I mentioned these two were slightly different, and what they do if they get into your office is how they're different, since neither of them will actually end your run directly. If Balloon Bitch makes it into your office, he will quickly leave, but not before taking every single film reel out of your camera, forcing you to have to go through all of the cameras to find more. And at this point in the game, you really don't have the time to be doing that. Now, if JJ gets into your office, she'll do something so foul, I'm trying to hold back the vomit from spewing out of my mouth just thinking about it. If JJ gets into your office, she'll steal your fucking mask off the table. She will then teleport to a random camera in which you'll have to fucking find her and click on her in order for her to return it to your desk. Oh my fucking god, that is literally the most evil thing I've ever seen a character in a FNAF game do. Oh fuck. Oh, she took the fucking mask. I'm cooked. I didn't know she took the mask. I thought that sound cue from JJ was her. I thought the sound cue from JJ was her leaving. It was not. It was her grabbing my shit. She copped me. She copped on my shit. I'd rather JJ kill 6 more children than take my shit. I'm being honest. Oh, but guess what? We're still not done because there's still 2 more threats to talk about. I know I said 3 at the start of the night, but these 2 characters are basically 1 character, which is why I'm saying there's 2 more. These characters are Candy Cadet and Astro. The fuck me silly, backwards, forwards, upside down, flip me, bend me combo. Let me explain it. So, you'll need to watch camera 10 to see when either of these 2 leave. It's important you know who leaves first. If Candy leaves, he will approach one of your gates at random. You, of course, will not be able to see him at your gate without either flashing your camera or watching the cams to see when he enters. He also makes no sound cue either, so that's great. Once he's there, you'll need to close the gate until he leaves. However, shortly after Candy Cadet attacks, Astro will attack the other door shortly after. Now, you may be wondering why I mentioned how important it is for you to know who leaves camera 10 first. Well, that's because if Astro leaves first, he'll do something a bit different. If Asshole leaves first, he too will go to either of your gates. However, when he's at your gate, he'll start singing. You need to close which gate you hear him at until he leaves. And of course, when he does, Candy Cadet Hole will soon attack the other side. These 2 add so much more unnecessary stress to this game, and Solar Neon knew exactly what she was doing when she made this. Asshole. Before we move on to night 4, I want to talk about another death minigame I got while working on this night. It's literally an exact copy of the Give Cake minigame from FNAF 2. The only major difference is that we play as Farley instead of Freddy, and instead of a random crying child, we see a girl come to the entrance who in the programming is named Charlie. Soon after, a car pulls up to the building and a man in a bunny mask gets out. Now, while I would imagine this person is probably Martinez, I do have to point out that in the code, this character's name is Guillotine. And if you remember from the first game is the name of the serial killer. So it appears we get to see the abduction before one of his many murders. But with that, we can move on to night 4. It got worse, guys. Let me tell you, it got so much worse. Way worse than I could have ever imagined. Not only does Night 4 add 2 more characters, but it also adds a brand new mechanic that makes this game far more stressful than it already was. To start, let's talk about the new mechanic, being able to turn off the power to the building. I bet you can take a solid guess where this is going. When the power is off, you obviously can't check your cameras. However, you can still put your mask on and close your gates. With that in mind, now on to the 2 threats this night introduces. Let's start with the simplest one, Mangle. Mangle has 2 ways of getting into your office, the big hallway in front of you, and the vent that's on camera 9. I've neglected to mention this vent up until this point, because Mangle is the only character to interact with it. Plus, you can't even see or interact with this vent in any way regardless. When you see Mangle in your hallway in front of you, you'll have to shut the building's power off. She'll swoop into the office for a few seconds and then leave, wherein you can then turn it back on. The vent is pretty much the same, but since you can't see the vent, the way you'll know you have to shut the power off is when you hear her in your vent. Turning off the power throughout the night when watching the cameras is so integral to this game's cycle is absolutely brutal. And the final character introduced on this night doesn't help with that at all. Withered Farley is the last character introduced on night 4, and he serves to be one of the most stressful yet. Once Withered Farley makes a successful movement opportunity, he will teleport directly to your main hall. Every time you flash the hallway, you'll be able to see him. Throughout the night, he'll slowly creep his way towards your office, and once he enters, as I'm sure you could have guessed from my intro of him, you'll have to shut the building's power off until he leaves. Mazel tov! I want to die. This is every single threat in the game. And let me tell you, completing this night was honestly one of the hardest challenges I've ever put myself through. And we're not even on to night 5 yet, so I'm really not excited for all that. But there is still one thing I want to talk about before we move on to night 5, and that's another death minigame I got while playing night 4. In it, we play as an unknown character seemingly on a camping trip with another unknown character. Child number 2 wanders off and we go to follow him, only to go deeper and deeper into the forest as we lose track of him. When we find him again, we see him trapped in the back of someone's car as it drives off. Maybe got some inspiration from the FNAF movie, just a hunch. Shortly after, Farley jump scares us. And this leads to a small theory that I have. I get the feeling that for each of these minigames, depending on who jump scares us at the end of them is meant to hint at who the stolen child in said minigame would go on to possess. Just a hunch, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Anyways, on to night 5, and I'm really not excited for it, I can't lie. Thankfully, night 5 doesn't bring anything new to the table. I thank God for that every day that I wake up, because he knows better than anybody how I would have lost my mind had there been more animatronics added on this night. However, there is something very interesting to note about this night. 1, I never got a death minigame like I was hoping for, but that's fine. And 2, something very interesting happens once you complete the night. I'll let Dexter Black take it away. Subscribe, by the way. Woo! Oh! I need to relax. Wait, what? Mangle still kills you? What the fuck? That's right. Mangle kills you. And when reading the newspaper after the fact, we see that we've been playing as Jeremy Fitzgerald this whole time. Wowee! I'm leaking. What? But with the information of our player now being dead, who's to say what's going to happen on night 6? I'm not sure, and I'm very, very excited. Night 6 is pretty interesting, so let's just jump right into it. To start, we're now playing as Mr. Martinez, both the man who was holding the syringe in an earlier death minigame we talked about, and the man I suspect to be the Guillotine killer. In our phone call, we actually get to hear the conversation between Mr. Martinez and the phone guy, and I think listening to it for yourself will be much better than me describing it to you.
Fancy seeing you there, Mr. Martinez. And on a night like tonight.
Why are you interrupting my night, Gretchen?
You tell me, Vincent. Poking around my mall, and during an active investigation, no less. God. You know, I gave you a lot of time. More than I've given most of my vendors. But no. First your hunks of metal fuck with my staff. Then those kids go missing. The cops start ripping my business up. That poor Jeremy kid gets his head smashed in by one of your freaks. The one you told me you would fix. And I now find you there, doing God knows what.
Now what is that supposed to mean?
Oh, I think you've got a pretty damn fine clue.
Are you threatening me, Gretchen? I'm not sure baseless accusations are a good look for you.
Then let me make it simple. If you're not out by the time I get there, I'll throw you out myself.
Is that right now?
Yeah, it is. Want to know why? Because I've been in this business long enough to know what scum is. Whatever mess you've made, I want it cleaned up. Otherwise, the police might be expecting a little tip soon.
I think this further adds to my confirmation that yes, Mr. Martinez is 100% the Guillotine killer and this game's Afton. This night really serves to be a much harder version of Night 5. However, to my surprise, one new character is actually added, that being Midas, the secret character from the first game. He acts in the exact same way as Golden Freddy does in FNAF 2. Occasionally, when you drop your monitor, he'll be in your office. If you don't raise your monitor again fast enough, he'll kill you, easily becoming the most frustrating character in this game in my opinion, as the crazy amount of shit going on is already hard enough to keep track of in your head, but adding this bullshit guy on top of it really serves to make my head explode. However, it did lead to my crazy completion of Night 6. Fuck, I'm dead. What? Holy shit! Tell me that's not the craziest completion you've ever seen. Yeah, I thought so. But with that, Farley's Jr. closes down due to a bunch of bullshit that was completely expected, and Swing Shift at Farley's Jr. comes to a close. At least, that would be the case if we didn't have a bit more lore stuff to talk about, since with Midas actually showing up, I'm sure you could have assumed there's some stuff I was able to find. To start, by going into the extras menu and checking out the characters, moving over to the withered characters, you'll actually see missing posters for each of them, adding to my theory of depending on who jump scares you equating to who the dead child possessed, with Garrett possessing Farley, Charlie Emily possessing Basil, Terrence Martinez and Crystal possessing Jailhound, and an unknown person possessing Charlie. Why is this unknown? Well, because I never actually got Charlie's death minigame. But let's go take a look at it, shall we? In this minigame, we play as Susie Rosa. We walk around town until we eventually stumble across our dog, dead in the middle of the road, clearly being hit by a car. Shortly after, a car pulls up next to us and the Guillotine killer steps out, telling us that he can fix our dog if we get in the car with him. And I'm sure you can imagine what he does to her next. And speaking of minigames, there's still plenty to cover. Let's rapid fire through the minigames I never got in my playthrough over on my second channel, Dexter Black. Starting with the minigame called Riverbed. We play as an unnamed little boy in the rain. We walk past the place where Susie's dog was killed, and continuing forward, we see the Guillotine killer dropping the body of presumably one of his victims in the lake before he is then attacked. And if you remember, this is probably his third victim, which was referenced in one of the papers in Farley's 1. The next minigame is called Save Them. We play as Withered Farley as we follow the marionette through the building. She spells out save them as we travel, but before we can get to the exit, the killer steps in and smashes the marionette to pieces. And finally, we have Late Night, a minigame that's really just a cutscene. We watch a mother talking on a payphone while her daughter is clearly trying to get her attention. Eventually, she wanders off, only for us to see the killer's car whiz by, presumably, I would imagine, hitting her with it, although no sound cue is heard to indicate that. The mother goes to look for her, and then we get jump scared by the marionette, which would tell me that this little girl would go on to possess her. Oh yeah, there actually is another minigame that I got, I just didn't mention it for some reason, so I'll mention it now. It's called I'm Sorry. This one is also just a cutscene, and in a much different style from the others. A boy is sitting in the hospital with Mr. Martinez. They're watching the corpse of an unknown person completely wrapped in gauze. Looking back at Martinez, we see this unsettling image. And with that, that's all of the cutscenes in this game covered. However, we're still not quite done talking about stuff I was able to find. To start, there are several newspaper articles to read just like in the first game. Each appears at random when you click the paper stack in your office. They read, Marvelous Mimic Man. The winner of the 1995 Henton's Robotic Fair has been announced to be Vincent Martinez's Marvelous Mimic Man. This robot won due to its impressive state-of-the-art AI that allows it to near perfectly mimic the actions and poses of anyone around it. Vincent Martinez, the proud creator of the Mimic Man, has made a statement on winning first place. I am honored to receive this award. Thank you to the judges and especially the voters who made this happen. I hope to show you more of the Mimic Man and other creations like him soon. Farley's closes its doors. Lawsuit from Showbiz Pizza Time Incorporated closes down beloved family restaurant. After a long and grueling trial, Showbiz Pizza Time Incorporated has won its lawsuit against New Edge Incorporated, the owners of Farley's Fun Zone. The lawsuit alleges that New Edge Incorporated not only plagiarized multiple of its characters, but also stole confidential blueprints and schematics for their animatronic mascots. As a result of New Edge losing the lawsuit, they have been ordered to pay Showbiz Pizza Incorporated $3 million in damages. While New Edge has yet to make a statement, their decision to shut all of their 10 Farley's Fun Zone locations has sent a clear message. Obituaries. Abigail Leslie Emily, September 5th, 1954 to July 30th, 1985. Abigail was born on September 5th of 1954. She grew up in a lovely house down north before moving to Utah and marrying a brilliant husband and having a lovely daughter, both of which were unfortunately taken away from her too soon. Abigail tragically killed herself on the 30th of July, 1985 via a self-inflicted gunshot to the head. We hope that Abigail is in the warm light and with her husband and daughter. So, a robot that can mimic people made by Martinez, a plagiarism lawsuit for blueprints and schematics, and a woman who tragically killed herself, each with something redacted. And of course, after getting killed by Midas, there is an additional paper you can read. Tragedy at Midas's. 10-year-old boy bitten by animatronic. This afternoon at Midas's Galactic Pizza Palace, one 10-year-old boy, Tobias Martinez, was bitten by one of the establishment's animatronic characters. It was reported that he was shoved inside its mouth by 4 children who have yet to be identified. Police have not yet confirmed if this is a murder attempt or freak accident, although they are still investigating. Tobias is reportedly in critical condition, with his frontal lobe nearly severed. The owners of Midas's New Edge Incorporated have yet to make public statement on the matter, aside from suspending all operations at the restaurant. Tobias Martinez was bitten and killed at Midas's. I wonder if this isn't the person we see in the hospital bed in the I'm Sorry minigame, as this is clearly this game's equivalent to the Fredbear bite. And since we're drawing parallels, let's draw another one. In the weird phone call all the way in Farley's 1, the first line mentions a riverbed. And what do we see in one of the death minigames? That's right, the Guillotine killer throwing a body into a riverbed. Whose body this is, though? No other than Thomas Fiver, Martinez's 3rd victim. But with that, as far as I'm aware, is everything that the first 2 Farley's games have to offer. I'm incredibly excited for the rest of the series that Solar has planned, and she's actually shown me a sneak peek of the 3rd game. I'm obviously not going to spoil anything, but it looks crazy. Overall, both of the Farley's games are clearly heavily inspired by the original FNAF games, and even seem to be following the original pattern and story these games laid out. And I honestly really like it. Solar is very, very passionate about this project, and you better believe I'll be here to cover the rest of the games as they release. What makes a game difficult? Is it puzzles, bosses, nerve control, or a mixture of all of those things? I think almost any answer to that question is a valid one. However, I think there's something all players, especially Five Nights at Freddy's players, can agree does not make a game difficult: RNG. Standing for random number generation, RNG is basically just when the game decides to go, and make something happen in the game at complete random with no thoughts of balancing or user experience whatsoever. In a lot of games, RNG can be a good thing and add to the overall experience, whether that be contributing to grinding for a really good gear in a dungeon of an MMO, or contributing to a loot box if you're a degenerate and play Hoyoverse games. But something I think FNAF players can agree on is that RNG is almost never a good thing, and the game we'll be diving into today implements it in some of the worst ways of all time. Join me as we dive into the world of the Tubby Land archives. The Tubby Land archives begins with a cutscene. The camera pans around the building, showing the various rooms, and we listen to a quick phone call from the CEO of the company we will soon be working for. He tells us that we've gotten the job and that we'll meet with a guy named Joey, and he'll be teaching us what we need to do. The camera pans past 2 of the antagonists we will soon be introduced to, and oh my lord, do I need to talk about how awesome this game looks. These characters look terrifying. I love them, and I honestly feel like this game's menu screen is one of the best FNAF menu screens I've ever seen. The way the characters shake as they reach out for you, mixed with the unsettling background music, provides a very uncomfortable feel, which I think fits great into a FNAF game. Anyways, moving on to night 1, we're introduced to who I can only assume to be Joey. However, through in-game subtitles, we can see the game refers to him as 03. Not really sure why. The night 1 phone call is just about as uneventful as I'm sure you could have guessed. 03 explains the basics, and not much lore is mentioned at all. 03 tells us that the guy that worked before us was named Evan, but other than that, not much else is revealed. And while yes, I could describe to you how he describes what our job is, but it's kind of my job to tell you what our job is, so let's do that. There is only one threat that is activated on night 1, that threat being Poe. For those of you who are grown adults and don't know anything about the Teletubbies, Poe is the red one. However, before we can actually talk about Poe, we should talk about the general tools we have at our disposal. Obviously, we have cameras, but the cameras in this game have 3 unique functions. Okay, 1 unique function. I've seen the other two. I'm just trying to be nice because apparently I'm way too negative in these reviews. Let's go over the two non-unique functions first. To start, we have our camera flashlight, just like FNAF 2. It lights the camera up. Who would have imagined? Wow. However, the flashlight battery in this game that's displayed in the top corner of the camera actually goes down pretty fast. So that's why in my playthrough, which you can see on my second channel, Dexter Black, it's very common for you to see me flash the light on a camera for a fraction of a second. Since as you play this game, you'll learn where to look for each of the animatronics, a super brief flash should really be all you need. The next familiar mechanic is an audio lure, except unlike most audio lures, it won't make you want to kill yourself by only working a handful of times before forcing you to stare at a reboot monitor for 300 years. I'll explain how the audio lure mechanic works when it becomes relevant. Before that, let's talk about the last mechanic in the cameras. The reboot? The shock. I don't really know what to call it. There's a button on the cameras that allows you to remotely turn off and on said camera. There's almost never a reason to turn a camera off, so I'm just gonna pretend like that doesn't even exist. But turning a camera on is very important because of one main mechanic this game has that just makes me smile from ear to ear. You see, that joke was funny because I lied. In the top corner of the screen, you'll also see a camera stability percentage. Throughout the night, this number will decrease, and each camera has its own dedicated percentage. When the percentage reaches 0, that camera will automatically shut off, and you'll have to go to said camera and turn it back on. This mechanic is in no way annoying by itself, but when mixed with a certain dickhead we'll talk about later, this will quickly become one of the main things in this game that makes you want to detonate a flash grenade next to an infant. You can also hide behind some curtains in your office, but that won't become necessary until a later night. Now, pivoting to talking about Poe. Something I'll hand to this game is that it does a really good job at making every character be a constant thorn in your side. No character can be forgotten about. No character can you just let your brain go on autopilot to deal with. You constantly have to be aware of each character, which is something I think is a very good thing in a FNAF game. Poe will do what most robots in FNAF games tend to do, wander around the building and make their way to your office. Something you'll notice about a lot of characters in this game is their ease of ability to juke you. Unlike most FNAF games where each character usually only has one main form of attack, most of the characters in the Tubby Land archives can attack both of the doors in your office. And because of the way the building is set up, there are multiple opportunities for the characters to swap which side they're going to attack on, making it even more important for you to constantly be monitoring all of them. Poe is the only character in this game that is affected by the audio lure, thankfully. However, there is a very big problem with Poe that I will bring up towards the end of this video, but for now, Poe pretty much is just Springtrap. Don't let her get to your doors or she'll insert herself inside of you, and you can only lure her into rooms she's adjacent to. Ooh, I don't like that. Call it back this way, bro. Come here, please! Poe by herself is not a formidable foe, but will likely become the character you forget about the most later down the line. Of course, it wouldn't be a FNAF game without post-night minigames where all you do is walk around, now would it? Rest assured, Tubby Land Archives has those as well. However, there is something I want to mention about these minigames. The way they control is honestly really satisfying. The camera moves with the player, but it doesn't lock to them. It glides around their movement, which leads to a super satisfying feel. Not only that, but the art doesn't have that typical purposeful dog shit look to it. It looks like this could actually be a game inside of an arcade machine, and I think that's great. But what happens in the first minigame? Well, to start, we play as the green Teletubby, Dipsy. We're told to find Nunu, and once again, for those of you that know nothing about the Teletubbies, Nunu is this fucking vacuum that's alive, or something. After wandering around the building, we find Nunu in a closet and his eyes glow red, which means he's evil because duh, that's what red means. And we're told that Nunu was sleeping. Duh, that's why his eyes were closed, you moron. I can't believe the game is having to explain this to you. On night 2, we get another call from O3. He explains not a whole lot, basically just goes over the 2 new animatronics, but I feel like I can do a hell of a lot better than he can. He does bring up Nunu, the vacuum cleaner, and explains that the CEO worked on building him himself. He always told the workers to stay away from it because it was too dangerous. I find that a bit odd, and so does O3, but we're gonna not question it. It's just FNAF things, I suppose, right? Anyways, On to the two threats this night introduces, the previously mentioned Nunu and the yellow Teletubby, Lala. Lala is the real main antagonist of this game, at least she feels like it, as she is the character that without a doubt will require the majority of your attention throughout this game, and is the first major occurrence of painfully AIDS RNG throughout this experience. Lala is one of the few characters that can be seen on the cameras without the use of the flashlight since her eyes glow. She does the same thing that Poe does. She can attack both doors and has multiple points throughout the cameras where she can swap sides and fuck your day up. Generally, her mechanic is easy. Lala will never move backwards, so once she's at the entrance of one of your doors on the cameras, if you later check and she is no longer there, then you know she's about to attack you. And when she is, all you have to do is hide behind the curtains and she'll jump into the office to look for you. Yes. Yo, I would not want those things to grip my hips. I ain't not gonna lie. Them big fucking oven mitt hands, bro. But she does have the mind of a toddler and will quickly forget why she wandered into the office in the first place and promptly leave. Where Lala becomes incredibly ass-clenchingly AIDS is when we start to talk about what I'm going to call her final bait and switch. The two final cameras she will appear on before attacking are camera 1A and camera 1B. However, there is a camera in between that can serve as one final point for Lala to switch sides, that being camera 2A, the worst fucking camera in the whole game. When Lala is on either of her two kill cameras, when she has a successful movement opportunity, she will do one of two things. One, she'll just prepare to enter your office, wherein you'll need to hide behind the curtains, or she can do the much more frustrating option, move into the bait and switch camera. When she's in this camera, she obviously won't be able to enter your office. However, when comparing this switch camera to the other one, it becomes a lot more infuriating. The other two switch cameras are 4A and 1B. This is the only other point in the cameras where the characters can switch attack sides. However, the difference between these cameras and the bait and switch cameras is that the bait and switch cameras have a camera in between. And because of this, when Lala is in the bait and switch camera and has a successful movement opportunity, she can enter any of the two kill cameras, even if it's the kill camera she just came from. This alone isn't a huge problem, but when we get into later nights and everyone is more aggressive and there's more characters active, in most cases, you would almost always rather have Lala just move into her attack phase so that she'll reset to camera 5A and you can focus on someone else for a bit. However, there will be many occurrences where Lala will just jump between her bait and switch cameras, leading to you need to spend way more time on her than you ever should have, which will end up getting you killed by either Poe or another character I'll mention later in the long run. The other character this night adds is the previously mentioned Nunu. Nunu, thankfully, isn't a normal attacking character. Nunu is actually in the office with you, and you can see him behind the curtains you go to hide in. He's just a preventative measure to stop you from hiding in the curtains all night. If you stay there for too long, he'll kill you. Pretty simple sugar. After beating night 2, we're tossed into another mini-game segment, this time playing as Poe. Once again, we have to go find Nunu. After a bit of exploring, we find him getting his clanker ass to work, filling up the custard machine to make some bomb-ass desserts that I personally will never eat because I'm not really a sugar type of guy. Moving on to night 3, we get yet another phone call from 03. He tells us that everyone who works in this building never feels like they're alone when they enter the building, and no shit, there are a bunch of murder robots always trying to fornicate with them, so that checks out. 03 expresses that he will be trying to look through some of the files later on to figure out what's going on, and if I were to guess, that's not gonna bode well for him. 03 also mentions another Teletubby, and of course, that character is the new threat on this night, that being the purple Teletubby, Tinky Winky. Tinky Winky is probably the least frustrating character throughout this whole game. Same shit as every other character. Go to your office, juke you along the way. Except the way to deal with Tinky Winky is different. We're told that he doesn't like high-frequency noises. Well, luckily for us, the flashlight on our cameras just so happens to make that correct frequency of noise to piss him off. He also makes a very noticeable sound cue on whichever camera he's on. So if he's ever in the wrong place, just hold the light on him and he'll move backwards. No problem whatsoever. The post-night 3 minigame has us play as Lala. Once more, we're tasked with finding Nunu. Spoiler alert, this is what we're gonna have to do in each of the minigame segments. After some searching, we find him taking out the trash. However, as I'm sure you could already see because you have eyes, the trash he's taking out definitely looks like flesh and blood, so that's just awesome now, isn't it? Night 4 gives us my favorite phone call in this entire game. Something I really need to point out is how amazing the voice actors in this game really did. The acting is nothing short of amazing. It never sounds like the characters are acting, it always just sounds so real.
It turns out I'm not crazy. There's something going on around here, and it's not good. I don't really know how much I can say over the phone. I mean, who knows who's listening, but I think I might be onto something. This whole company goes way deeper than I ever thought.
And that's what I think all good acting should be. You shouldn't even think that the characters are actors, just that they're characters. And I think this game does an almost perfect job at that. Moving on to what's actually said, 03 did some digging and explained that the entire company goes way deeper than he expected. He found some things that he probably wasn't supposed to see, but he never gets into explaining what. Before he does, the CEO comes to his office. They have a brief yet uncanny conversation. The CEO knows that someone had been looking at the company documents, and it's clear that he thinks 03 did it, which, to be fair, he did. 03 denies ever doing so because, of course, why would he admit that? And the CEO says that he's got his eyes on him. He asks 03 to come in the next night to help look for some of the documents, and 03, while confused as to why, agrees anyways. The CEO leaves the office and 03 quickly hangs up the phone. This night also introduces the final threat in this game, Dipsy. Dipsy is another character that you won't really have to focus on all too much. Dipsy will appear in your front office door. He has a few phases he can move through before you see him in his main attack phase, where he's fully leaned into your office. When you see him like this, all you have to do is hide. A very faint sound cue will play when he leaves, and you'll be able to come back out and continue. Not a very difficult character to deal with, but a character that does force you to pull the camera down every once in a while. And in a game where the camera is easily the most important tool, this isn't something you're gonna want to be doing very often. This is also the night where you'll really start to notice how difficult this game really is. The characters really start to move quickly on night 4, and the pressure present and nerve control required really starts to stand out. In the comments of my first episode of this game, which you can watch over on my second channel, Dexter Black, I got several comments warning me about how hard this game really is, and upon reaching night 4, I finally really started to feel it. But nothing could prepare me for the complete bullshit I was about to go through come night 5. But before we can talk about night 5, we need to talk about the post-night 4 minigame. In it, we play as Tinky Winky and find Nunu cleaning up a spill, as the game puts it. This spill very clearly is blood, and I have my suspicions as to whose blood it could be, but I'll explain my thought process after we talk about night 5. Night 5's phone call is a doozy, to say the least. 03 explains that the CEO set him up. He came in the night the CEO asked and walked right into a death trap. He mentioned he found a box in a party room that smelled terrible. He found several documents. Reading them revealed everything. He explains that the entire building and business we're in now is a cover-up. But before he can tell us more, Nunu finds him and kills him in what I can only describe as one of the most uncomfortable phone calls I've ever heard. Shit. Nunu, no. Oh, are the... Okay, that was a pretty cool fucking phone call, dude. I can't even lie. That was actually badass. And I can only assume he is the owner of the blood that Nunu was cleaning up in the post-Night 4 minigame. But now we get the displeasure of talking about Night 5. Single-handedly, one of the most infuriating gameplay experiences I've ever had in my entire life. This is where the RNG gets atrocious, and where I find this game's biggest asshole, Poe. As I've already mentioned, Poe acts very similarly to Springtrap in FNAF 3, and if you know anything about FNAF 3, then you know the worst thing about it is the dreaded 1 in 7. For those of you who have played FNAF 3, that phrase probably just sent chills down the back of your spines. 1 in 7 refers to the 1 in 7 chance Springtrap has to completely fucking ignore your audio lure, and is single-handedly the reason why FNAF 3 is even as hard as it is, as it takes a system that would be built around skill and turns it into a game of, is Springtrap gonna fuck you or not? This is exactly what Poe does. At least, I'm pretty sure is what she does. There's no official documentation about her AI, and as far as I'm aware, there's no decompiling of this game to double check. But I'm almost positive she has the same mechanic. Maybe it isn't 1 in 7, but it's almost 100% 1 in something. Because if it's not a 1 in something, then that means that Poe moves around the camera so quickly that your audio lure doesn't even matter. I tried my absolute hardest, but I could not for the life of me beat Night 5. I gave up, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. If my theory of Poe ignoring some of the sound cues is correct, then fuck trying to beat that night and just waiting for luck to be on my side. The time you have to wait to use the audio lure after using it is way fucking longer than in FNAF 3. And sure, you never have to reboot it, but that doesn't really matter when Poe moves at the fucking speed of the goddamn Roadrunner. Seriously, go watch my Night 5 playthrough on my second channel, Dexter Black. It's almost laughable how quickly Poe gets to my office despite me using the audio lures at every single opportunity that I could. You could also just watch to see some salt since there's plenty of that, but like, goddamn, this night is hard. This game is fucking hard. I should have listened, but I was thinking, well, how hard could it possibly be? And the answer to that question is, I don't know. It's impossible to tell how hard the game is because the skill ceiling is capped by how lucky you get. So I don't even know how difficulty could be measured. But I need to relax a bit. Sure, I wasn't able to beat this game, but I know there are some people out there who were able to. And because of those people, indie fuel, that I'm able to finish talking about this game. So congratulations to all of you who put yourself through this horseshit torment. I appreciate you. The post-Night 5 minigame actually takes place before the Night 4 minigame. We play as Tinky Winky once again and actually get to see who, once again, I can only assume to be 03, dragging himself out of a room before all of the animatronics hold him down as Nunu kills him and he's left to die on the floor alone with no one to ever come and help him. We get our check for the week, but before we decide to piss off forever, our character begins to speak to himself. He wants to go back for one more night, to see if 03 is still alive, and if he isn't, he wants to get the documents that 03 mentioned so that his death wouldn't be in vain. Personally, if it was me, I don't care if 03 was my brother. He's dead as disco, and there would be no way in fuck I'd be going back there in a million years. But Parker, our player's name, decides to, and we get to jump into Night 6. An experience I never got to see for myself, and I'm glad I didn't. As far as I'm aware, nothing new was added to Night 6, just being a more difficult, more RNG-based fuckfest of a night, but after completing it, we move on to the post-Night 6 minigame. This minigame is actually a minigame, not just a walk-around simulator. In this minigame, we have to find 10 of the documents in the basement, all while the animatronics patrolling you are trying to find us. If at any point they see you, you're dead because they're much faster than you are. So you have to strategically hide by staring at a fucking wall every once in a while whilst they pass, and eventually escape the building. I obviously never did this because I couldn't even beat Night 5, let alone Night 6, but even just watching somebody else complete this minigame, even this minigame looks really fucking hard. So I'm grateful that I never had to do it. But that's all Tubby Land's Archives Act 1 has to offer. Yes, I did say Act 1, which would imply that there are more on the way. In fact, Act 2 does actually have a Game Jolt page, but with no updates on said page for over 2 years, who's to say if it will ever actually come out or not? I personally really hope it does, because the story of this game actually seems intriguing to me, which is odd for a FNAF game. Overall, the Tubby Land archives can prove to be an incredibly frustrating, luck-stricken experience. However, I don't think that can fully take away from how amazing this game both looks and how it is mechanically if you can put aside the 2 major RNG points that it has. The story is mysterious and is everything I need to want a sequel, and I really hope it does come. I've been covering FNAF games for quite a while, and every time I find a super unique game, I think to myself, there's no way any other FNAF game is going to be able to top that in creativity. But then, like clockwork, I find another one, and the game we'll be talking about today is no different. The game we'll be looking at today is called FNAF Showtime, a game made with Godot and is completely 3D, with hands down the most unique mechanic I've ever seen in a FNAF game before, and I can guarantee you've never seen anything like it either. So strap in as we dive into the exceptionally difficult world of FNAF Showtime. Jumping right into night one, there's plenty to talk about. To start, we don't actually just get booted directly into the office. Instead, we start at the entrance and can actually freely roam around the building to get a feel for our surroundings, which I always think is really nice. The layout of the building is incredibly different from any other FNAF game I've ever played, with the office being directly in the center of the building. This game consists of 9 cameras, and I mention that number for a very specific reason I'll mention later. Walking around the building, we stumble into the main dining room and can get a glance at single-handedly the most uncomfortable animatronics I legitimately think I've ever seen. These things are rancid and disgusting. They got the British treatment with their teeth, too. That's nasty. What the fuck? Oh my. Look at that pot belly, bro. Dude, that cheek is nasty. That cheek is actually so gross. I don't like it at all. I don't think any kid would want to come to a restaurant with the characters looking like this. Anyways, moving to our office, we can talk about the tools we have at our disposal. And strap in because this might just be the most creative and horrifying FNAF game we've ever covered. In Showtime, you're stuck in the cameras once you start the night. You can never drop them, which means you can never close your doors. Not that that's an issue anyways, as both of the entrances to your office don't even have doors. This is where those 9 cameras I mentioned become super important. Your cameras are controlled by your keyboard, not your mouse, using the keys Q, W, E, A, S, D, Z, X, and C. If you take a look at the cameras, you'll be able to see which letter correlates to each camera. This is a system that took me very long to get used to, but it's actually super cool. Now, when it comes to looking around the cameras, Showtime isn't like most FNAF games. The cameras don't pan back and forth by themselves. Instead, you're in charge of manually controlling the cameras using your mouse, and you have full control of the cameras, being able to point them in literally any direction you want, which I think is really cool. You'll even notice that there's a camera in your office and you can actually see yourself at your desk. But if we can't leave the cameras and there's no way to close the doors, how are we supposed to defend ourselves from the threats this game introduces? That is an amazing question. But before we answer it, let's talk about the 2 threats this night introduces. Night 1 introduces both Bonnie and Chica. I'm going to be talking about them at the same time since they both behave in the same way. Obviously, their goal is to reach your office, so that's exactly what they'll do. Something I really like about this game is you can always watch them move around the building. They don't have just one static frame for each camera. As this game is a 3D environment, the characters actually do roam around. Now, onto how to defend yourself. Well, your camera is equipped with the ability to reset the animatronics and force them to go back to where they started. And how do you activate this? Well, let's just say I hope you guys have been practicing aim labs because you're gonna need it. By holding left click, you can shoot a signal out of the camera where the crosshair is pointing. If you see Bonnie or Chica anywhere on the map, aim the crosshair at their head and hold down left click. Do this for long enough and a little jingle will play and their eyes will glow yellow, signaling that they will return to their starting location. Is that not like the coolest shit you've ever seen? I've never seen anything like that in a FNAF game before. I love it when fan devs try something new, and I think this one really nailed it, because this makes this game incredibly stressful. And that's for one main reason. You'll notice that there are a bunch of employee-only doors all around the building, and that's for a good reason. If the characters could only come from one area, it'd be way too easy to just camp their spawn points. So, when a character goes into attack mode, they will appear from literally any of the employee doors around the entire map. They can start in the main dining room, they can start in the entrance, the 2 party rooms, Pirates Cove, the arcade. It doesn't matter. They can come from anywhere, needing you to constantly be monitoring everything and listening for footsteps to see where the characters are going to come from. It is hard to put into words just how cool and creative this mechanic is. Nope. Get the fuck back in there, dude. I want nothing to do with you. This is gonna be fun. This one's gonna be fun, dude. Holy shit. These characters move around a lot, so you will have to be tracking their heads constantly, which I personally think is really fun. And I think it's absolutely terrifying when you hear a character's footsteps, but you can't quite tell which room they're coming from. That mad dash looking around the cameras to try and find them in time really adds to the tension this game builds. Dude, where are they going? I cannot keep track of these guys for shit, dude. And it's only going to get crazier and more difficult as we continue. So let's move on to night 2. Night 2 only adds one new threat to the game, and that threat is Foxy. Honestly, not that big of a deal when compared to the other characters and their bullshit. Foxy is very simple. He stays in Pirate's Cove the entire game. He'll slowly move through different phases before charging at your office. Throughout the night, just make sure you're shooting him to reset his position, and he really shouldn't be an issue at all. No, where the challenge of this game comes into play is Bonnie and Chica, and the awkwardness of aiming and resetting them, as a lot of the time it feels very unresponsive. One of the strategies I came up with was at the start of the night, pointing all of the cameras at every possible place where the animatronics can come from. That way I can watch all 9 of them at once and see which characters come from which doors. And this would be the perfect strategy, except for 2 main problems. Let's start with the smaller issue. But don't get it twisted, it's still a pretty big issue. The characters move very quickly when they're walking. That by itself isn't a problem. What is a problem is the inconsistent amount of time it takes to send the characters back. Sometimes when you shoot them to reset, you only have to hold the mouse down for 3 seconds, and other times you have to hold it for upwards of 8 seconds. This massive inconsistency makes it very difficult to deal with the characters properly. But now onto the much bigger issue, which I admit is partially a skill issue on my end, but it also shows one of the game's flaws. An animatronic can be in a room. No shit. However, if you're looking at a character in a room from a camera that is not in the same room, you will not be able to reset them, even if you can clearly see them and have your crosshair directly on them. I think this is a problem. As mentioned earlier, it can take several seconds to send these characters back. And they're very fast, so they will be switching cameras frequently. And you'll have to match what cameras they're going to constantly, since you can't reset them from the room that the camera isn't in, even if you see them. The part where this is a skill issue is, I haven't been able to learn the map perfectly, to know off the top of my head how all of the rooms are attached. When you control the direction of each camera, and there's 9 of them, it will very, very quickly become incredibly disorienting to even figure out which area of the building you're in, let alone track 2 characters that are constantly walking around all the time. Again, this specific part is a skill issue for sure, but I do think my previous point is an actual problem. Okay, got my fucking aimbot on, bro. What the fuck? This is cheating. Bonnie's cheating. The fuck, where is he? Oh shit. Dude. Where the fuck is he? What the fuck? Dude, where the fuck was he? I could not find his ass. The fuck he go to, bitch? But with that out of the way, let's move on to night 3. Night 3 is actually a doozy, guys, I can't lie. While no new threat is introduced, an entire new mechanic is implemented that makes this game extraordinarily harder than you could ever imagine. What is that mechanic, you ask? Well, let me tell you, pretty much Satan. Now, at specific times throughout the night, all of the lights to the building will be turned off for at least 1 in-game hour, sometimes longer, making it incredibly fucking difficult to see anything. So difficult that through my playthrough, which you can see over on my second channel, Dexter Black, I actually had to change my graphics settings to make it easier for me to see, because there's no way in hell I would have completed this otherwise. However, there is something I want to praise this game for when it comes to introducing this mechanic, as thankfully it didn't just drop it directly on your forehead like I do with babies. Instead, it makes the early half of the night incredibly easy. While the phone guy is talking to you and the lights are on, only Foxy and Chica will be active, making it very easy for the first 2 in-game hours. Once 2 a.m. strikes, the power goes out for the first time, and it will come back on at 3 a.m. During this time, still only Foxy and Chica are active, and Chica will really only attack 1, maybe 2 times at most. Only after the lights come back on at 3 a.m. will Bonnie become active and start attacking. Once again at 4 a.m. the power will turn back off, wherein it will never turn back on for the remaining 2 hours of the night. So you get time to get a feel for the lights being off by only having to deal with Chica, who moves far slower than Bonnie does, and then they ease you into dealing with both of them at the same time. I think this is such a good way of introducing such a debilitating mechanic. It doesn't feel like this game is just prying open my asshole and filling it with its saliva. It's properly teaching the mechanic without directly making you feel like it's teaching you. This is a perfect execution of a mechanic like this, and as much as I hate the lights going out, this game made me hate it probably as little as I possibly could hate it, which I think is pretty cool. But with that new aids out of the way, let's move on to night 4. Night 4 is an interesting night, and another night that really shows off how wonderful this game is at introducing mechanics to you. With me just talking about how well the light function was introduced, this night has a brand new character so heinous, yet the developer was able to introduce them in a nice way, or at least as nice as possible considering how much this guy sucks. Night 4 introduces Freddy, the big kahuna himself. The role he plays is both very simple and the most terrifying at the exact same time. His goal is, of course, to get into your office. However, the way he does so is what makes him so scary. Unlike Bonnie and Chica, who wander around the building and then enter your office, when Freddy appears from a door, he will make a beeline directly for your office with no stops along the way. And Freddy is fast. Very, very fast. Freddy's music will start playing during the times he can attack. During the music, you'll hear him laugh. When he does laugh, that's how you'll know when he's about to open a door. So you'd better drop everything you're doing to focus on him, because once he exits one of the doors, you have approximately 6 seconds to deal with him before he starts digging in your butt. Now, I mentioned they introduced Freddy very nicely. How exactly did they do that? Well, Freddy activates while the lights are off on this night, so that's not very kind. However, during this Freddy attack section, both Bonnie and Chica will not be moving around, so this entire moment is spent focusing on Freddy as you understand how he works. Again, another beautiful execution of a mechanic like this. I dislike when FNAF games introduce a mechanic while everything else is happening with no explanation of how the character works. I think having the player figure it out on their own can be a good thing, but not while everything else is happening at the same time. Wonderful integration, but it makes me very scared for Night 5. Speaking of, let's move on to that. Night 5 overall doesn't add anything new. In general, it's just a much harder version of Night 4, and I'll explain why. Remember how I said that this game did a really good job of teaching the Freddy mechanic? Yeah, well on Night 5, let's just say they're not so nice. There are 2 blackouts on Night 5. The first is very kind. It lasts 60 seconds and consists only of Freddy, just like Night 4. That made me think for a moment, just a moment, this game was about to be very kind. But boy, was I wrong. The second blackout happens at 5 a.m. and runs throughout the final hour. During this final blackout, all 4 of the characters are active, and it's by far the most stressful section this game has ever had. I was skilled and based enough to beat it on my second attempt, but that's only because I'm literally the hunky chiseled god. 2 additional things to talk about on this night. The first is that it reveals another Freddy mechanic. That being, he can attack while the lights aren't out as well, except there is a big difference. Something you'll notice about Bonnie and Chica is that Bonnie is significantly faster than Chica is. During the lights out sections, Freddy will be Bonnie's speed, which is why he's so scary. But while the lights are on, Freddy will move at Chica's speed, still making him a big threat since he goes right for your office, but also makes him easier to deal with. The last thing I want to talk about before we continue is Golden Freddy. During my playthrough of Night 5, which you can see over on my second channel, Dexter Black, I actually had Golden Freddy appear. He appears in your office, and I didn't dare look at him with the office camera, but you can see I was looking at him through one of the party rooms. But with that, that's all Night 5 has to offer. I assumed there would be some form of cutscene after completing it, but no. I was not so lucky. Instead, we're just thrown right into Night 6, where I'm sure we'll have just a perfect happy-go-lucky time. So turns out it wasn't actually a night 6. Upon walking to your desk to start the night, you're greeted to the extra screen where you can play any of the previous nights again, do a custom night, a real-time night, and do 5 unique challenges. So as far as we're concerned, that's all FNAF Showtime has to offer. I'm just kidding. Of course we're going to talk about the challenge modes. So let's quickly go over the first and most boring one of them all, Blackout. As the name suggests, the entire night has the power out. So say hello to Usain Bolt Freddy pile driving your rear from the back for the entire night. Not a very interesting challenge mode, but definitely a challenge mode nonetheless. The next challenge is called Find the Cupcakes, my personal favorite challenge mode, and you'll never guess what it is we have to do on this night. Throughout the cameras, 10 cupcakes will be hidden. All you have to do is find each of them and reset them to collect them. The only threat active on this night is Chica, which makes sense since it is her cupcake, but I do feel it makes this challenge far too easy. I think having all the characters active but at lower AI values would make this challenge much more interesting. This next challenge we're going to talk about is very, very evil. Like, think of the most evil thing you could possibly imagine, right? Think about it. Think of its shadow, right? Start with like a shadow, just got like a shadow ball, and now mold that shadow. Put it between your fingers, let it slide like you're making some clay ball in art class in 5th grade, right? Shape it into the most annoying, fucking terrifying piece of garbage you can possibly think of. Is the shadow you molded the shape of Balloon Boy? Because if it is, you guessed this challenge night perfectly. This challenge is called Camera Problems, and I bet you can take a perfect guess as to what that means. During this night, while all characters are active, Balloon Boy will occasionally, and very frequently I might add, cause one of the cameras to break. When he breaks a camera, he himself will be present in the room of that camera and you'll have to reset him. But how do you do that if you can't access the camera? Well, you'll have to find him in that room from another camera and reset him through that one. And Balloon Boy, we all know him, is just an asshole. Piece of shit, smelly ass, goofy ass, shitty ass, pissy ass, farty ass, sharty ass, stupid ass, dumb ass, bitch ass, dunce ass, fuck ass boy. This is an incredibly difficult challenge, and I love that a new character was created specifically for it. I think that's really cool. The next challenge is called Above and Below, and did something I would have never expected. All it does is add a brand new character alongside all of the other ones we've already been having to deal with, that character being Mangle, who is by far the most terrifying character of them all. You'll notice that above each employee door, you'll also find a vent. These vents are where Mangle comes from. And the challenge for Mangle comes from both her being on the ceiling and by being the fastest character in the entire game, even outspeeding Bonnie and Freddy. That's all this challenge is, but holy shit, Mangle is so fucking fast and it makes this challenge one of the hardest. But I still don't think it's quite harder than Balloon Boy's. The next challenge is called Divided Attention, and you'll be able to guess exactly what this night is going to offer the moment you load into it. That being the fact that you can hear a music box, and if you check the prize corner, you'll see a small music box on the counter. That's right! This challenge just adds another fucking Foxy to constantly look after. Isn't that just fucking amazing? Yeah, needless to say, I'd like to move on as fast as possible. But with that, that's all of the challenges that FNAF Showtime has to offer. And overall, I think FNAF Showtime is an incredible game. Even though there are only 4 characters throughout the main night sections, this game proves to be one of the most difficult I've ever played. Learning how to track the characters and prioritizing them is exceptionally difficult, but it's so cool. Being overwhelmed, not necessarily something as we people look for in life. There are a lot of things people like to do that don't really make sense to me. Some people like to go cliff jumping or skydiving, something to give them an adrenaline rush, and while I myself would never do it, I can at least understand how that could be appealing. You want to know something nobody ever wants though? To be overwhelmed. This is the reason why a lot of max mode challenges can turn a lot of people off. and the same reason why I have no interest in trying out Hopeless Pursuit. For the love of God, please stop emailing me about Hopeless Pursuit. I'm not doing it. However, recently I found a FNAF game that is one of the most unique FNAF experiences I've ever played, except there was something very interesting about it. It has to be one of the most overwhelming Five Nights at Freddy's games I've ever played. This is probably going to be a long one, so sit back, relax, and let's talk about Next Week at Freddy's. Next Week at Freddy's takes FNAF 1 and completely reworks everything about it, adding several brand new mechanics to make your heart sink into your ass. And nothing explains this feeling better than when you load into the office and turn around for the first time. Oh, whoa. Whoa, oh. 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 Fuck. This is the control panel, your main mode of defense throughout this game. If this looks like a lot, that's because it is. Here's a fun fact. I actually went to play this game around 4 months ago, but after seeing this monstrosity behind me, I actually ended my recording and chose a different game to play because of how ridiculous it looked. This control panel is intimidating. There are so many switches, levers, and panels on this thing. I wouldn't blame you if you decided just from glancing at this that this game wasn't for you. To really understand just how much shit goes on in this game and how much you'll have to learn, this game actually gives you a tutorial night where you can mess around with everything in the building for as long as you want, because just throwing you into the game would 100% be too overwhelming. Next Week at Freddy's doesn't have any phone calls, nobody to help you and to explain to you what to do. Except there kind of is. This is Comcat. Get used to seeing him a lot. His first major role is in the tutorial night, where he will teach you how to use the computers and teach you the mechanics of each important camera in the game, which, by the way, there is a fuck ton of them. So strap in and get ready because it's about to get insane. I'll explain the important mechanics as they become relevant, so let's start with how Comcat works, because yes, of course, he himself acts as a threat. While Comcat himself can't kill you, he can be the most annoying character on the face of the earth when he wants to be. You can click on his icon on your taskbar to make him appear. There are a few phrases he will say when you do this, and occasionally a phrase will prompt you to respond to it. While you're talking with Comcat, you won't be able to interact with anything else on the computer. This includes your cameras, but to be honest, everything else on the computer isn't useful from a gameplay standpoint. If you don't periodically check on Comcat this way, he will take speaking with you into his own hands and appear on the screen whenever he wants. He's pretty much just Bonzi Buddy, except he doesn't steal your private data. When Comcat chooses to appear on his own, the conversation you'll have with him will be much longer than if you initiated the conversation yourself. And since you can't control anything until Comcat leaves, it's in your best interest to occasionally check up on him. 2 characters become active on night 1, Bonnie and Chica. But before we talk about their mechanics, I want to take a moment to really appreciate how amazing this game looks. Every little detail looks incredible, especially the animatronics. If you look very closely, you'll be able to see the fuzz from the fabric on the robots. It's honestly some of the coolest stuff I've ever seen. So much attention to detail, it's incredible. But now we can talk about how Bonnie and Chica work. And trust me, these guys do way more than what they do in the official games. Like, take every mechanic that each of them does from every official game and merge them together, and I bet you that they will still do more in this game. I told you it was overwhelming, so let's get into it. Let's start with Bonnie, since he's usually the baseline, basic FNAF character. The character that should be simple to understand and should pave the way for more interesting mechanics to form off of it in later animatronics. How much could he possibly do? Well, a fuck ton. Like, a shitload. Bonnie's a whole fucking FNAF game by himself, I can't even lie. Bonnie starts on stage. You might be wondering why I'm not just saying what I usually say. Oh, he walks around the building and eventually makes his way to your office. Well, because he's not that simple this time around. So tracking his movements is actually important. Bonnie has 4 possible attack methods. I'm sorry. 4? That's the most insane thing I've ever heard of. And Bonnie is supposed to be the simplest character? I'm mortified of what is yet to come. Well, calm down, buddy. Let's go over each possible route that Bonnie can take, starting with the most basic one, heading to your office. This one is simple. Bonnie will walk to your office, appear in your window for a while, and eventually walk into the doorway where you can really see how fucking hulkingly terrifying these robots are. I know that FNAF 1 animatronics are like 6'9" or something like that canonically, but no FNAF game has really shown that off in a way that is meaningful. Seeing the animatronics in the doors in this game is actually kind of scary. Obviously, just close the door and you'll be a-okay. However, do keep in mind that the animatronics in this game like to sit at the door for approximately 12 years, so that's fun. Bonnie's next means of making your life miserable is through attacking the compressor room. What the fuck is the compressor room? Well, now is the time we get to start talking about the control panel, and where this game really starts to become an overwhelming headache. The compressor is a large machine inside of the building. The compressor is what allows the doors all throughout the building to be closed, because as I'm sure you could have guessed, it compresses the air that allows the pistons of the door to work properly. I think. I don't know, I'm not an engineer. If any engineers are watching, explain how wrong I am about compression and pistons or whatever the fuck in the comments. Thanks. Bonnie will try to enter this compressor room through the hallway camera right before your office. You will have to use the control panel behind you to remotely close off the door to the compressor room before Bonnie gets the chance to enter. However, it's moments like these where I need to bring up an issue I was never able to figure out myself. Since this game is made in a 3D environment, unlike the Click Team FNAF games, it gives a lot more room for the characters to move around. So it's very common that you'll be able to see characters in multiple places on the same camera. When it comes to doors like the compressor room, telling exactly where the animatronic's next move is going to be is borderline impossible. Sometimes it's obvious and the character will be standing right next to the door facing it. However, sometimes they'll be miles upon miles away from the fucking door, yet still have their next movement opportunity be into said door.
You're not near the door, you're fine.
Oh, Chica, you dick. So this leads to you closing doors whenever you see a character on the camera, which a lot of the times the character was never going to enter in the first place, therefore just wasting a fuck ton of power for no reason. If Bonnie manages to get into the compressor room, he'll slap his fat crack all over it and break it, which will require you to reboot your compressor. With your compressor off, you obviously won't be able to shut any of the doors throughout the building. This includes the doors you can close on the cameras. Bonnie's next attack strategy is the camera connections in the server room. This works exactly the same as the compressor room in theory. You can close the door to the server room when an animatronic is close, using the control panel behind you. If Bonnie manages to get inside the server room, he'll drop his big fat stupid balls all over the control panel and fuck up your camera connections, making you unable to see any of the cameras. You will then have to manually reboot them, which along with the compressor reboot takes a very long time. However, I'd argue that not being able to see your cameras affects the gameplay loop a lot more often. Where a lot of FNAF games fail to make the cameras super useful, Next Week at Freddy's succeeds greatly at making the cameras more important than any other tool at your disposal. The final attack strategy that Bonnie can have is activating Foxy, which brings up Foxy altogether. There are actually two different versions of Foxy in this game, the normal one and the scrapped one in the back room. We'll talk about the back room one later. For now, let's focus on the main Foxy. By himself, Foxy is incapable of doing anything and will never attack you, only through the assistance of Bonnie and two other animatronics that can activate him. Bonnie has the chance to enter Pirate's Cove and attempt to activate Foxy. Once Bonnie enters, you won't have a super long time to stop him before Foxy comes for that ass.
Whoa, no.
Fucking dick!
My whole asshole just fell off. It did, just dropped right out. Just dropped, flop, just fell right out of my ass.
Using the special flashlight on the Pirate's Cove camera, you can scare away any unwanted animatronics. However, using this light does temporarily cause higher power usage from everything that uses power. For what reason? I have no fucking idea. I guess God just hates me. If you don't scare Bonnie away fast enough, Foxy will activate and run to your door. If you don't close it fast enough, he'll place his hook into your rectum, and I'm sure you can imagine how unpleasant that would be. If you do close the door on time, just like FNAF 1, he'll take away some of your power. Except unlike FNAF 1, the max he can take isn't 6, instead being like fucking 15% power just disappears out of existence. So really make sure you're watching that Pirate's Cove camera. Whew. There, a couple of pages into the script and I'm finally done talking about the very first character in this game. Isn't that awesome? Now it's time to talk about Chica. Chica also has 4 different ways to attack you. Isn't that just fucking awesome? Luckily for us, 3 of the mechanics are identical to Bonnie. Obviously, Chica can attack your right door. She can also try to fuck up your cameras using the server room, and she's one of the other characters that will attempt to activate Foxy. However, I have noticed that it seems like Bonnie will attempt to a lot more frequently. However, that may also just be because Bonnie's AI value is typically always higher than Chica's is. The new mechanic that Chica adds is pretty similar to Bonnie's compressor attack, except Chica will attempt to attack your power grid. When you see her near the power grid door, you can obviously close it using the control panel behind you. If she manages to get into the power grid room, she will literally just shut off the power to the entire building, and you'll have to reboot it, which takes quite a long time. The power being turned off is undoubtedly the most dreadful situation you can be in. Not only does it require you to wait a billion years for your power to turn back on, but the power being turned off also turns off the compressor, meaning that after you wait forever for the power to turn back on, you then have to wait forever again for the compressor to turn back on. And on top of that, at the start of each night, you have to boot up the cameras, which takes time in and of itself. So of course, when the power is cut, you'll have to reboot the computer as well. Oh yeah, and don't forget to be checking on Comcat frequently or he'll waste even more of your time. Geez, Dexter, this sounds pretty complicated, and we haven't even introduced everyone yet? Exactly. We still have a lot more to talk about. But if you want to feel a little bit better, the lower the character's AI, the less likely they are to make the most effective choices, meaning that on night 1, most of the movement will be Bonnie and Chica trying to disable your cameras. I personally didn't have them come to my doors on night 1 at all. Night 2 doesn't add anything new, just increases the AI of Bonnie and Chica, so chances are you're going to be seeing at least one of them at your door on this night. However, I will be taking this time to talk about what I feel is this game's biggest flaw: time. The nights in this game are long as fuck. I'm talking super fucking long. However long you think they are, they're longer. Most typical FNAF games now will have a real life second equal 1 in-game minute, meaning that most nights in FNAF games are 6 minutes long. I feel this is a good length for a night, just dividing the in-world night time in minutes by 10. However, Next Week at Freddy's thought it'd be really funny and a little bit quirky to make each in-game minute 2 seconds in real life, meaning that each night in Next Week at Freddy's is a whopping 12 fucking minutes long. Are we serious? I guess I get it. The animatronics move pretty slowly to give you time to properly search for them on the cameras. But 12 minutes? I think I'd rather swallow a grenade and die, thank you. Like, I still beat the whole game, but god damn, losing when you're 11 minutes into a night will really make you question how violent of a person you actually are. Now, something interesting happens after beating night 2. We get thrown into what this game calls nightmare segments. Think of them like this game's version of a post-night minigame, except this time there's actually way more to do and it isn't mind-numbingly boring. Well, okay, the first one is. During this nightmare segment, we wake up in the back room of the restaurant. Is this actually happening or is this a nightmare? I'm not 100% sure, but I'm leaning more towards it being a nightmare just because of the name of the segment. We wake up on the floor and notice that the door is closed and we're stuck inside. We say that someone will surely come to find us, and without even standing up, the nightmare ends. Again, I told you the first one was boring, but they will only get more and more interesting from here, trust me. Moving on to night 3, once again, nothing new is added. The AI of Bonnie and Chica are just increased. But you really have to think, with how many different ways each of them can attack you, and how overwhelming the game's system as a whole is, this is still enough to make each night feel significantly more difficult than the last. Moving on to the second nightmare segment, we're finally able to stand up and really get a good look at our surroundings. The room is very small and very cramped, which would give any normal person a feeling of claustrophobia. We pick up a flashlight that barely does a goddamn thing and start to explore for an exit. It's at this point where I noticed that these nightmare sections would be my least favorite part of the game because of the horrendous mix of both motion blur and horrific head bobbing. But that's really besides the point. We eventually notice a door and recognize that it's just like the one in the office. However, the lever that controls the door is missing. We find it on a desk, but before we can attach it to escape, a throbbing pain comes to our head and we pass out. Night 4 is where we get to talk about the new and final threat this game has to offer. But don't let that fool you, because this threat is a big one. A big stinker. A poopy head for all of you elementary schoolers out there who really shouldn't be watching my channel. Night 4 introduces Freddy, and let me tell you, he's got all the tricks up his sleeve, and he's ready to flatten you like a pancake and fold you like an omelet. Freddy can literally do everything, and he moves faster than the other animatronics, so needless to say, he's going to be the one that grabs a clump of your rump and doesn't let go like a snapping turtle. Not only can Freddy take all 4 of the paths that Bonnie and Chica can take, those being fucking the compressor room, activating Foxy, killing the power, and disconnecting your cameras, he can also attack either of your doors, and there's also something else unique to him that he can do. Remember how I told you that there are 2 Foxys in this game? Yeah, Freddy fucks around with the other one. Scrapped Foxy is present in the back room. The only other character who will enter this room is Freddy. And be careful, because sometimes seeing Freddy on this camera can be pretty difficult, as he has the habit of hiding in the shadows. When you see Freddy in the back room, shut the door to Scrapped Foxy's room using the control panel behind you. If Freddy manages to get inside, he will send Scrapped Foxy to your office. However, unlike normal Foxy, Scrapped Foxy can attack either of your doors. I personally have no idea how much power he takes away when he pounds on your door, as I'm a fucking god gamer and never had to deal with him.
It is a mistake I will not make again. Uh-oh. Okay, let's talk about this. I had that fucking door closed when Freddy was in there.
Which, by the way, you can see my epic FNAF skills on my second channel, Dexter Black. But once Scrapped Foxy pounds on your door, he'll break in the hallway where he won't reactivate for the rest of the night. And from here, nothing else actually gets added to the night sections. Each night just gets more and more difficult. Now sure, there aren't a lot of threats that can happen at the same time, but the reason why this game is so overwhelming is because of how much you have to remember. You have to know where all the characters are. You have to understand how each mechanic works, and you have to be able to control your nerves during all of this for 12 minutes straight and barely pass each night due to almost running out of power because these animatronics camp more than a fat Call of Duty player.
Oh, hi, Chica. My luck is gargantuan right now.
Moving on to the third nightmare segment, this game really shows how much of a dickhead it can really be. We wake back up and are finally able to put the lever on the door, only to find out that the door isn't even getting power, which doesn't make sense because we know from the night sections that if there's no power, the door opens, but what the fuck ever, I'm pretty sure this is literally just a nightmare. Turning around, we notice that the once cramped room is now larger, as a wall that was previously present has disappeared, now leading into a large storage area. With our worthless flashlight in hand, we venture into the dark room, following a wire on the ceiling that will hopefully lead to something to turn the power on. After some wandering, we find a breaker box, but it's locked and we're unable to get into it. We figure a key must be around the maze of a storage area somewhere, so we set out to find it. Guys, I hated this section so fucking much. I mentioned earlier I have motion sickness, and this gameplay is some of the most nauseating shit I've ever seen in my life. During my playthrough, which you can watch over on my second channel, Dexter Black, I spent a pretty decent amount of time looking for this key, and I couldn't find it. With my head pounding and really just wanting to wrap up the video, I looked up a walkthrough just to see where it was. I went to the location where the guy in the walkthrough found it, shout out to Indie Fuel by the way, only to find that the key wasn't there. The key spawns in a random location, so you can't look up where it is. I now had to spend who the fuck knows how long wandering around with the feeling that my head was about to implode looking for a key the size of your ball sack. However, eventually I did find it and I used it to unlock the breaker, only to find out that all we unlocked was another fucking lock. God damn it! Are you serious? This is not a thing that has ever existed. Now we have to find a 4-digit code in this fucking hellhole. This is by far the worst nightmare segment in the entire game. It is ruthless. At first I thought, oh, let's just try the classics. You know, 1987, 1983, but nothing worked. So I assumed that I had to go find the numbers somewhere. I checked the walkthrough, and of course, the code is randomized. Amazing. After once again, who fucking knows how long, I wander back to the breaker, only for the game to then tell me that I should listen for clicks on the correct numbers. Are you fucking me right now? Why did you not tell me that when I was guessing codes before? Why did you wait so fucking long to come up with that? This game hates me. This game is pulling my hair and just plowing the shit out of me like I'm a dirty little slut. But whatever. We input the code and flip the breaker switch. and as we're walking back to the door to try and open it, we once again pass out. I guess that's what happened when you're just fucked for hours upon hours at a time. You get so tired you just pass out. Fantastic. As I've said, Night 5 doesn't add anything new, so we can just jump right back into the hellhole that is these nightmare segments, where the same 15-second ambience loops forever right in my fucking ear when I already have a goddamn headache. Once again, we wake up and walk back to the door to see if we can open it. We flip the switch, and for fuck's sake, something's wrong with the compressor, so we have to go try and find something else. Now, I'm not sure if this next part was just a me thing, so for anyone else who has played this game, let me know if this next part happened to you. We're told literally nothing of importance. The only thing our character states is something along the lines of, "What am I going to do now?" And that's all we're left with. So my first thought is something along the lines of, oh, I just need to look for another who the fuck knows what. So I did just that. I wandered around the storage area looking for something I hadn't seen before. Who can even say how long I was wandering around before I eventually found what I was supposed to find? Directly next to the original room that we were in at the beginning of the nightmare segments, another wall miraculously disappeared, and that's where we were supposed to go. That wouldn't even be a huge problem if I could fucking see anything at all, but it's so fucking dark. I can't see my hands. It's so dark I can't even think, which I know doesn't make sense, but fuck it, here we are. Entering this new room, we see a bunch of pipes on the wall. We know the power is on, but figure that there's a generator somewhere that hasn't been turned on, because it wouldn't be a horror game if you didn't have to turn on a generator at some point, now would it? After wandering down a hallway that probably took me 20 minutes to find because I couldn't see a fucking thing, we stumble into the room where the generator is. We power it on and promptly pass out once more because of how loud it is. I'm sure you could guess, nothing new of note in Night 6, just really fucking hard. In the final nightmare segment, we wake up once more. We walk back to the pipes only to find that a bunch of gas, or air, whatever the fuck, is leaking out of them. So we have to find something to close the valves, which means I get to play another game of walk around aimlessly with a headache looking for a randomly generated tiny object when I can't see a fucking thing. After a long time searching, we find a valve. We then have to take the valve back over to the pipes and figure out which of the billion of them to close off. At first I thought, let's follow the pipe that leads to the door we're trying to open. So after following the completely unconventional and nonsensical twists and turns of the pipes, I found the one that went to the door. Placing the valve in that pipe, I tightened it and it caused the valve to shoot out at Mach 1000 and land who the fuck knows where. So you know what we get to do now? Play another game of walk around aimlessly with a headache looking for a randomly generated tiny object when I can't see a fucking thing. After finding it lying on the fucking ground, I decided, fuck it, I'm just gonna brute force this one. And to my luck, the pipe I chose to put the valve in next just so happened to be the correct one, thank God. Finally, we head back over to the door and try to open it one final time, and finally it opens. We see a newspaper with some audio from a newscast playing in the background, explaining that an employee at Freddy Fazbear's burned down the building after reporting that the animatronic stalked him during the night. This employee is who I can only assume to be us. We were placed into a psychiatric hospital because everyone just assumed we were cuckoo bananas. We also find out that the owner of the restaurant, who in this game is called Jacob Fazler, retarded name, I should mention, has been arrested for killing several children, probably in reference to the typical FNAF missing children's incident. And of course, the co-owner, Marcus Reed, killed his daughter. Why did this game choose to give them different names instead of calling them William and Henry? I'm not totally sure. But with that, the main game of next week at Freddy's comes to a close. But this game's lore goes a lot deeper than what we've seen. I mean, seriously, the backstory of this game takes up an overwhelming majority of this game's own Wikipedia page. Throughout this game, you're able to look through the files on the computer while also doing things like checking the cameras. It's through these files where you can learn the most overwhelming bullshit you've ever been up against in your entire life. Alright, so let's break down the absolute shit show that is this game's retelling of the original FNAF lore. As I understand it, and with significant help from the wonderful writing of City, the creator of the FNAF fan game wiki. Seriously, I couldn't do this shit without you. No idea how you had it in you to write all this, but here's my shitty retelling. Next Week at Freddy's kicks off with Jacob Fazler and Marcus Reed, the two guys behind Fazbear Enterprises. They started cooking up the idea in the late 80s, and by October of 1989, they have brought the building that would become Freddy Fazbear's Pizza family restaurant. Jacob even logs all of his progress on the same computer in the office you used during the game, talking about buying the stage, wiring the rooms, and bragging about getting pneumoatronics to build the animatronics. He also cast the voices: Adam Burton as Freddy, Rick Ellis as Foxy, and Davey and Suzanne Paul for Bonnie and Chica. By 1990, the place is open. Business is booming. Jacob marries Nancy. She helps out in the studio, and soon they're running 3 locations. Everything looks fine, but Marcus slowly drifts away from the company, skipping meetings and distancing himself. In 1995, Jacob installs the infamous control panel in the office. You know, the fucking NASA dashboard of switches that's basically the whole reason this game is overwhelming in the first place. Then, life falls apart. Nancy dies, and that's never explained, and Jacob is left raising their daughter Lara on his own. Lara grows up around the restaurant but loses interest in it, and Marcus cashes out of the company entirely. Jump to 1999. Jacob gets a shiny $12 million offer from Sunbird Hotel Corporation to expand, and for the first time in years, he's motivated again. But in 2001, Marcus storms back demanding his old share. Jacob tells him, "Too bad, fucker, the deal's already done," and Marcus has a meltdown. He's literally dragged out by Adam Burton, Freddy's voice actor, and Marcus files a lawsuit, but the outcome is never revealed. And then tragedy hits. In June 2001, Lara is found dead in the storage room of Freddy's. 3 days later, Sunbird pulls their deal. Jacob's later logs get darker. He writes about hearing Lara's cries and feeling like she's watching him, angry. By 2002, he admits he's, quote, made a mistake. That mistake? Involvement in the deaths of 3 children. Not long after, Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica start moving in disturbingly lifelike ways, which, yeah, the model viewer pretty much confirms are the spirits of those 3 kids. Meanwhile, the employee chat logs on that same office computer show the slow collapse of the place. Staff complain about the animatronics walking around on their own, about creepy suits left lying around, about Jacob drinking and acting strange after Lara's death. Scrap Foxy briefly gets mentioned as this janky earlier version of Foxy. There's even a memo from Jacob banning guest mode after a balloon incident, and literally bolting the animatronics to the stage to avoid lawsuits. And as far as I'm aware, that's all Next Week at Freddy's has to offer. Overall, I think it's one of the most creative FNAF games ever designed from a gameplay standpoint. The game looks gorgeous, it functions really well, and it found a way to make literally every single mechanic useful, which is something a lot of FNAF games just don't seem to be able to do. I would highly recommend you play this game and give it a try. You will not regret it. The kings of classic FNAF fan games. What comes to mind when I say that? Maybe Five Nights at Candy's, Five Nights at Wario's, Those Nights at Rachel's, and Treasure Island, to name a few. But for you freaks, you goons, you heathens, there might just be another answer. A game so popular when it came out, for a reason I'm not even sure of myself. Today, I'll be talking about that game. A game so utterly terrible, yet somehow loved. Sit back and relax, because today we're diving into the weird world of Five Nights with Mac Tonight. Where do I even begin with this game? Probably by saying that for this video, I played both the first and second games, except not really, because I played the remastered versions of them. Was this a good idea? No. These games were pretty bad, and unironically enough, the thing about them that pissed me off the most was the story, but we'll get into that later. And trust me, you don't want to miss that. The game starts as you'd expect an old FNAF game to begin. We pick up a newspaper and accept a job at a restaurant full of animatronics waiting to break our consent and make their willy wag. We enter the restaurant and get the first phone call of the night, and really begin the nightmare that is this game. Not only are these phone calls absolutely horrific from a story standpoint, but they're also somehow even worse from an immersion standpoint. Why? Well, not only are they quite literally impossible to hear because of how fucking loud the rest of the game is.
This is Chrissy. You may remember me. I'm the manager here at this Macca's.
But I guess the developer thought that it'd be really funny not to cut out any of the mistakes by the voice actor.
We can't afford broken animatronics in a restaurant that hasn't even opened yet. We can't afford broken animatronics in a restaurant that hasn't even been broken to the public yet.
That's more funny than anything, but the whole barely being able to hear the phone call part is enough to make me want to throw a baby deer in a river. Oh yeah, and if that wasn't bad enough, the phone guy is also Australian, so that's just torture. Anyways, the phone guy doesn't really say anything of substance in this night, really only explaining the basics, but I get the feeling I can do a hell of a lot better than he can. Let's start by going over the few tools at our disposal. First, we have the cameras. No shit. On the cameras, we have a call button that is located on the camera that contains Mac Tonight. This button does what you'd think it does. Makes some noise, animatronics go, "Ew, wee," and then leave. But who's affected by the call button? Let's think long and hard about that one, guys. I don't know. Maybe the fucker who's on the same camera? Jesus Christ, why am I having to explain this basic concept to you? You're like a toddler, a little stupid drooling baby, a little insignificant worm, rodent, vermin, bug. Sorry. No, I'm not. That's a lie. Anyways, the only threat on this night is Mac himself, and he's pretty damn basic. All he does is meander through your cameras, like holy shit, he's so slow. Eventually, he'll wander into your office, which, pause for a minute. This is not an office. I think we're just stationed in the kitchen? Maybe? I quite literally have no idea where we are right now, because this, to the left, is the drive-through window. So we have to be in the kitchen, right? Because if so, that's stupid. But whatever. When Mac gets to your office, all you have to do is use the call button to cause him to go back to his stage. Very basic. What's the downside? I'm glad you asked, because of course there's a downside. If you use the call button too many times, an error will begin. To fix it, all you have to do is go to your control panel and reboot it. God, don't you guys miss playing Five Nights at Freddy's 3? What's that? You don't? That's unsurprising, because FNAF 3 makes me want to stick my penis in a blender. But believe it or not, that's not the only attack Mac is capable of. The other attack consists of being a fat ass and going through the drive-thru several times each night. As I'm sure you could have guessed, Mac has the chance to instead wander to the drive-thru window, and when he does, all you have to do is open the control panel and literally just tell him to fuck off, and he listens. Surprising, I know, but you know what? I'm not gonna complain, because he listened, and I appreciate that. But after each night, we get to talk about the post-night cutscenes, which aren't really cutscenes because it's just a black screen with people talking. In this game, I have no idea who we play as, but who is important is the Australian man, so get used to hearing his voice a lot. The Australian man's name is Chris. He's the manager of the McDonald's we work at. And in this cutscene, he walks into the office of... I actually don't know who we could be talking to. It's clearly a higher up because Chris asks him for a raise, but I have no idea who this higher up could be. I'm guessing it's the owner of the building, or who knows, fuck, maybe it's the CEO of McDonald's, I don't know. Anyways, Chris walks into his boss's office and asks about a raise. Why do you ask? Well, this is where we get to talk about the most hilarious sequence of words I've ever heard. Chris says his daughter is sick, with either an infection or a disease. He doesn't know what it is, but in his expert McDonald's manager opinion, it looks fatal.
Well, so far my daughter and I are dealing with very little money, mainly affected by taxes and whatnot. She's currently going through some infection or disease. I don't know what it is, but it seems fatal.
I know this is supposed to be like a super serious moment in the story, but I just thought this sentence was so fucking funny. Maybe I'm an asshole. I don't know. Of course, Chris is all pissy that he doesn't get a raise, which, by the way, grow up. You did what you should have done and asked. You didn't end up getting it. That sucks. But you want to know what you don't do? Throw a fucking temper tantrum and yell at your boss. Because that's just going to get you fired, moron. I get your kid is probably dying, but you want to know what'll make your financial situation a lot better? Not having a kid anymore. The boss explains that the reason Chris can't get a raise is because the company recently spent a lot of money on the new animatronics for the restaurant. They saw how well the Mac Tonight commercials performed on TV, so they thought it'd be a good idea to capitalize and buy the animatronics so that the company would make more money. That makes sense. However, because of this, the restaurant would be closed for a week while they did renovations on the building in preparation. This, overall, is a very valid explanation as to why Chris will not be getting a raise as of now. But instead, after only one fucking day of working at the goddamn restaurant, he's already both demanding a raise and throwing a fit after not getting one. Actual child behavior right here. Moving on to night 2, we get another call from our boy Chris. He's all mopey because his stupid kid is gonna die, blah, blah, blah. Who the fuck cares, am I right? He mentioned something about the Hamburglar being found in the vents of the building, which, by the way, I would find hilarious if the Hamburglar wasn't also the most infuriating character in this entire game. Speaking of the Hamburglar, let's talk about what this dickhead does. The Hamburglar, as I'm sure you could have guessed, burgles hamburgers. The Hamburglar, the Hamburglar, as I'm sure you could have guessed, burgles hamburger. The Hamburglar, as I'm sure you could have guessed, burgles hamburgers, and based off of where they found him, is a vent animatronic. Actually, the vent animatronic, as no other characters actually use it directly. We'll talk about that later. The Hamburglar will try to find your vent and crawl inside of it, something I think is very interesting considering this fat motherfucker steals cheeseburgers for a living, something I'm sure his mother is very proud of. Now, here's where I get to talk about how much I hate this piece of shit. He has a few phases before he's fully in your vent. What you're supposed to do is, in the final phase before he enters, blow super hot air using a button in your cameras to scare him away. That in and of itself is super easy. The problem comes from not knowing where he is, which again is super surprising given his profession of choice. Now, in most FNAF games, when you look at the cameras, they slowly pan side to side. They do the same in Mac Tonight's as well. However, in most FNAF games, you can always see the character when they're on the camera, no matter what the position of the camera is. Can you tell where I'm going with this? If not, let me make it very clear for you. When the camera is panned all the way to the right on this vent camera, you literally cannot see the Hamburglar. Why is this a problem? Because the cameras move so goddamn slow that you often won't be able to tell when he's moving because the camera is constantly glued to the right side of the screen.
Bro, I wish this camera wouldn't turn 400 billion feet away from that fucking thing. Bro, could you turn the fucking camera towards him so I can see his ass?
Luckily for me, I eventually heard a sound cue he makes to make noticing his movements a lot easier. But holy shit, future FNAF game devs, please, for the love of God, don't make this mistake, because this made me want to find a silverback gorilla and have him start digging in me. But regardless, if you can learn the sound cue, the ham bitch boy really shouldn't be too much of an issue, and we can move on to the post-night 2 bullshit cutscene. This cutscene starts with Chris getting on the phone with who I'm assuming to be someone at the hospital that's seeing his daughter, which, by the way, doesn't make sense. In the previous cutscene, Chris told his boss he doesn't have money to even get his kid seen by the doctor, which, by the way, I know in the US you can't legally be denied medical care, but fuck you, it's not disclosed where this game takes place, so eat my balls. Regardless, it is confirmed she has a disease. Still insane that the disease doesn't have a name either, because they've also confirmed that there's nothing they can do and she is in fact going to die. I find it weird that they can both determine that it is fatal when they haven't confirmed what disease it is. Or who knows, maybe Chris is just retarded and can't pronounce words with more than 6 letters in them, as emphasized by him once again getting upset and calling his boss stupid for ordering the new animatronics for his, and I quote, greed of money.
That bastard. Ordering them pieces of junk just for his greed of money?
Moving on to night 3, we're told nothing important by Chris and are introduced to 2 new characters, Grimace and Ronald McDickhead. Let's talk about Grimace first, because Grimace would never hurt a fly. On purpose. Grimace works kind of like a Foxy, having multiple stages before attacking you, except I actually just lied because he only has 1 phase before attacking you. When you see him move from his original position, all you need to do is press a button on your camera to make him go back. Are you starting to notice a pattern for this game's mechanics? That's fine. Maybe the main fucking mascot for McDonald's will be better. What does Ronald do? Well, he'll walk around the building, aimlessly probably, attempting to find your office. When he gets there, he'll make a sound cue and stand here.
I can see this getting really... Who the fuck is that? What is Ronald McDonald? Oh my fucking ears! Oh my fucking ears! For fuck's sake! What the fuck was that? I think this is like a window to the dining area. Maybe. Again, I have no idea where we are in the building. When he is there... You wanna take a little guess what you have to do to stop him from turning into the gobble monster, lathering your nuts in honey and having a feast?
Yeah, that's exactly right. You have to use the exact same call button that you use for Mac, except this time it makes no fucking sense because why the hell would that affect Ronald Donald? That's it. I'm not kidding. We're already at the point where we'll just talk about the next cutscene. For fuck's sake, people actually enjoy this game, and not just because of nostalgia. Whatever. In the night 3 cutscene, Chris goes into his boss's office, tells him that his daughter dying is somehow his fault, and then literally fucking stabs him to death. Slow way the fuck down. Really? That's your reaction to that? Sure, you didn't get the raise, but guess what? Clearly you were able to get her to the hospital because you found out it was fatal. But guess what, dumbass? No amount of money would have made it not fatal. And if it could have made it not fatal, then that just means you waited too long to get to the hospital to get it checked. Now, you might be thinking, oh, he didn't want to go to the hospital because he didn't have the money for it. Usually that would make sense, but I'm gonna say fuck you to that thought process in this situation, because if this guy is willing to kill somebody because his daughter is dying, I don't think anything would have stopped him from going into the hospital to attempt to figure out what's going on with her in a timely manner. This story is such a headache. This story is frustrating, and this story makes my dick hurt. If the plot of this game is trying to make me not like Chris, then I take back my criticism, as it's doing a great job at that. But if it's instead trying to make me side with Chris and understand his way of thinking and say, you know what? Sure, killing someone is bad, but at least you could argue he had a good reason to. Then this game is doing an absolutely horrendous job at doing so. Night 4 time. What does Night 4 introduce? Well, first, I want to take a brief moment to talk about the phone call and about how little sense this story makes. So, the phone guy is very clearly Chris. You can tell by the ear-grating Australian accent. So, I can't figure out the order of events that take place in this game. As we're playing through the nights, it's clear that the animatronics that were being brought have already arrived. The same animatronics that caused Chris's boss to not give him a raise. Cool. We're told in this phone call that the restaurant still has yet to open, which by the way raises a whole different ordeal of questions, like why the fuck are we even here? But whatever, let's forget about that for a moment. Throughout this phone call, it's very clear that Chris is bothered by the fact that the animatronics are moving from their positions at night, and he yells at us to move them back before we leave work. He says that we can't afford to have these animatronics break before the building is open to the public. So pause. Why the fuck does Chris care? Maybe I'm not even asking this question in the right way. So here, let's just pause and let's go over everything we know real quick and pretend that it all makes sense. Chris asks for a raise, gets denied. His daughter is told she's going to die and there's nothing they can do about it. Chris then kills his boss. This is what we know so far from the post-night cutscenes. We also know that Chris thinks the robots are stupid and have a part to play in his kid dying. So then tell me, why the fuck does he care so much about the state of these animatronics when in his mind they have a large part in why his daughter is either dead or dying? This is the big problem for me with this series. When I stop to think about why what's happening is happening, it just doesn't make any goddamn sense. And get this, when we start talking about the second game, it's going to make even less sense. No, I'm not joking. We'll talk about the second game in a bit, but this fact is just making me think that the dev wrote the story as he went. But okay, let's stop talking about the phone call now and move on to the threats this night introduces. Birdie and Mayor McCheese. Let's start with Mayor McCheese because it's literally just Mac tonight with a Fortnite skin on. Literally, he does the same thing. Can enter your office and show up at your drive-thru, is both dealt with in the same ways. Worthless character. With that out of the way, we can talk about the much more interesting character, which for a female bird character in a FNAF game, I surprisingly have no sexual tendencies towards it, because this bird is butt ugly. Birdie is the only other character that interacts with your vent, except unlike Big Boy, she doesn't actually enter it, probably because she's the size of Jupiter. All she likes to do is break your shit, so she must have gotten divorced, am I right, fellas? Anyways, her goal is to break your vent heater. A sound cue will play when she does so, and when she does, all you have to do is use your maintenance panel to fix it. And hey, while we're here talking about the maintenance panel, let's talk about how jank it is. and how it adds literally no challenge to this game whatsoever. The maintenance panel in Five Nights at Freddy's 3 adds a challenge because when something is being repaired, you can't use it, leading to a lot of bullshit timings that artificially make the game more difficult than it technically is. Mac Tonight's aimed to do the same thing, except they forgot the part where fixing something makes it temporarily unusable. While yes, the fixing beeps take a long time to finish, the moment you click the repair button, the problem is solved. So you can go to fix the heater, press the button, and immediately after use the heater to blow away the hungry bitch boy. Isn't that just awesome? The answer is yes, because without this gameplay flaw, this game would probably be impossible. Moving on to the night 4 post-night cutscene, we hear Chris driving in his car. And it's during this scene my mind was fucking blown, because this story somehow begins to make even less sense. It's here where we learn that up until now, Chris hasn't even been a manager. He was just an employee, and the guy he killed was the manager. Before I continue talking about this, we need to pause and immediately go over another massive flaw in this game's story logic. So, in case you didn't know, managers aren't the ones who give you a fucking raise, you moron! There is quite literally nothing he could have done for you. It's not his decision to make. The way raises typically work is the manager will recommend an employee for a raise. It's then either up to HR, a committee, the owner, or even higher management to decide whether or not to give the raise. This fucking retard killed a guy for no fucking reason whatsoever. And the craziest part, now he's taking his place. And that's why we hear him on the phone calls. He's the fucking manager now. Want to hear some even more mindfuck? He states on the phone call that he's going over to the facility where the animatronics are being stored to go destroy them. If he's destroying them, why the fuck does he care about them so much in the phone call we receive on night 4? What the actual fuck is going on in this goddamn story? It makes no fucking sense. And guess what? It's still going to make even less sense once we start talking about the second game. So strap in, guys, because if you haven't gone brain dead yet, then you're going to later. Going into night 5, we receive one last phone call from Chris. He thanks us for protecting the animatronics, even though literally in the night previously we got yelled at for letting them move, but fuck it, whatever. At the end of this phone call, something enters the office and ganks his ass.
You should wait. What are you doing?
Oh shit.
Get away from me, you piece of...
Oh shit.
Not totally sure what it is, we're left to finish off the night, which, as I'm sure you could have guessed, adds nothing new, so we can move right on to the post-night cutscene. So, I need you guys to take a deep breath before we dive into this cutscene, because you're going to need to use your head a lot, and honestly, it may implode from stupidity. During this scene, we hear the voice of Chris's manager, so we know that this has to take place before he was killed. He mentions that the animatronics have been very damaged in the facility they were being held in. We know from the last call that Chris was going to destroy them, which is why he was driving. So we know that scene takes place before this one. However, that also means that during that scene, Chris's boss was still alive, which means he went to destroy the animatronics to piss his manager off and then killed him. Now, slow down. That doesn't make any sense. Why would he do something like that if his final plan was to kill him? That wouldn't make any sense. He wouldn't get the chance to be angry about it because he'd be dead right after. I should also mention that his manager mentions needing to check the cameras to see what damaged them. And from a very, very important detail we will learn in the second game, it makes the scene where his boss is killed even more confusing. But I'll talk about that later once we learn this very important detail. For now, let's just move on to night 6. Remember how I said the call we got from Chris on night 5 was the last? Well, guess what, shithead? I lied to you. That's right, never trust YouTubers, especially not FNAF ones. They're either liars or pedophiles. And seeing the types of people I'm up against, I'm really glad I got given the liar trait and not the other one. Anyways, yeah, we still do get a phone call from Chris this night, except this time it's revealed that he's turned into an animatronic. Woo! Spooky, bitch! For some reason, he wants to kill us. I don't know why. He says that he can't have any witnesses, but that brings up way more questions. One, is he implying that we saw him kill his manager? Because I'm pretty sure we didn't. Trying to follow the timeline would show we weren't even working here at that time, so that's not possible. Second, even if we did see it, you're dead and have been turned into an animatronic or something. So it's not like you can be held responsible for your actions anyways. Also, yeah, I think it's pretty obvious Chris got killed by Mac in Night 5's phone call, as Chris is now a new threat in this night that will attack you. He's literally just Mac. He even looks like Mac. He attacks the doors, attacks the drive-thrus. Wahoo! Once you beat Night 6, you'll be thrown into a sort of free roam section, except not really, because it's a scripted scene where you walk up to Mac. He looks at you and the screen goes black, and then we get to talk about the post-night cutscene. This one takes place at who the fuck knows when. Chris is talking to his boss about getting a job watching over the warehouse where the animatronics are stored, the same place he later goes to destroy them. Okay, so we know this takes place before that, but can we pinpoint exactly when this takes place? The answer to that question is yes, and to answer it, we have to take a look at the second game. But before we hop over to that game, I have one more question to ask. What the fuck was the point of the character we played as during the night segments? We quite literally served no purpose. Apparently we were witnesses, but we never actually witnessed anything. At first I thought, maybe Chris is destroying the animatronics and then pretending in the phone calls to us it's something else doing it. But that wouldn't make sense because 1, we're not in the facility where they're stored, we're in the McDonald's, and 2, Chris killed his manager after he destroyed the robots. And we know that during the night sections his manager is already dead because Chris is the manager at that point. So what the fuck did we even do except just work at fucking McDonald's? I guess we got looked at by Mac at the end, but it seems like we were just utterly useless. Also, we were wearing a yellow glove, which would lead me to believe it was actually in the POV of fucking Ronald. I don't know what the hell's happening right now. But whatever, let's forget about this mess and just hope that Mac Tonight's 2 is better than this one. Spoiler alert, it's a lot worse. Get a refill on snacks and drinks. Let's dive deeper down the shithole. When it comes to Five Nights at Mac Tonight's 2, not only is it worse gameplay-wise, it's also worse story-wise, somehow. Let's start by getting one huge detail I noticed out of the way. On the title screen, you can see a list of credits, and if you look close enough, you can see that one of the people who helped work on this game was, Ivan G, aka the creator of my least favorite FNAF fan game series of all time, Jolly. If you'd like to hear me rant all about that game, you can do so after you finish this video, as I have an entire hour-long review of that game up on this channel. Also, I haven't done this at all in this video, so go subscribe to Dexter Black, Dexter Blue, Dexter Gray, join the Discord server, and go check out the merch store as well. All links in the description. In Mac Tonight's 2, we play as Chris, which would reveal that this game takes place both before the events of the first game and before Chris killed his manager. Loading into the first night, the phone call doesn't tell us a whole lot, basically what we already know. Chris took up the job to watch the warehouse where the animatronics are stored, but of course, we know he's just there to destroy them. Let's talk about our tools. This time around, we have 2 sets of cameras, one normal set and another set specifically for the vents. The only threat active on night 1 is Mac, who will walk through your cameras to try to get to your office. This time around, there are 2 entrances, that being 2 doors. Why? Because fuck you! What I really want to focus on was the biggest dick move I've ever seen a game pull before. Let's take a moment to tunnel vision on the only 2 cameras that matter in this game, Camera 2 and Camera 4. Both cameras are the cameras right next to your office doors, and through each you can remotely turn on a safety lock to keep the robots out. Each door has its own power supply. The problem? These power supplies drain fast as fuck. So much so that I was noticing on earlier nights that when Mac would appear on camera 4, that by the time he'd leave, I'd be left with a big chunk of power missing, which led me to believe that the remainder of the nights would be very difficult because no shit, he would be attacking more frequently. Something even cooler? Where does Mac go after camera 4? Camera 2. What's in camera 2? Another fucking entrance to the office. Holy shit, we have to waste even more power. Now pause. If you're familiar with this game, I can already tell you're going to the comments to explain to me how badly I'm not understanding how this mechanic works. And shut up. I know that's not exactly how it works. I like to explain based on my experience, and this is how it went. Turns out, this camera state is not Mac about to open the camera 4 door. He actually has 2 different phases on this camera, attack and no attack. When he's standing like this, away from the door, then you know he's just traveling to camera 2 to attack. He will look like this when it's actually him attacking camera 4's door. So what's the problem? Well, I literally never saw Mac go into his attack camera 4 state until night 3. Excuse me? I don't think that it's my fault for not noticing earlier when my RNG with movements is that dog shit, holy fuck. But whatever, after learning that, I had no problems with Mac, and we're free to move on to the post-night 1 cutscene. Psych! Guess what? There aren't any, we're just jumping right into night 2. Night 2 drops a fucking bombshell on me and blows up all hope of understanding the lore of this game. It's revealed on this night that the phone guy isn't Chris's boss, as he mentions that the manager at a McDonald's had his throat slit, now establishing that Chris had already killed him. This doesn't make any sense, and it pisses me off. And you'll understand why later when we talk about that very important detail I mentioned earlier, so just bear with me a bit longer. For now, let's go over this night's threats. This night introduces this game's Toy Freddy equivalent, the Hamburglar. And no, not because of his game mechanics, but because he's a fat ass. He is the character to introduce the vent mechanics, exactly how he does in the first game, except this time it's somehow even more worthless. Once he enters your vents, he will appear in any of the 4. When he does, all you have to do is seal the vent he is in until he leaves. Each vent has its own power supply, and these 2 drain very fast. But that doesn't matter because even during this game's most difficult canon night, you will hardly ever be attacked. The phone guy mentions that only 1 vent can be sealed at a time, but fun fact, that's actually just not fucking true at all because you can seal all of them at the same time if you really wanted to, so that's cool. Night 3 introduces 1 new threat, but before we can talk about that, we need to talk about the headache that is this night's phone call. During this call, the phone guy tells us that Mac's box was moved and looks like it had been opened. Of course, that makes sense because we watched him walk around the building. All good. Whatever. However, he also mentions the progress the police have made on the murder of Chris's manager. They found out he was a former employee and that he was spotted running out of the building wearing a mask and a McDonald's uniform. Pause, please. My brain can only take so much stupidity at a time. So, what this tells us is that at the time Chris killed his manager, he wasn't working at the McDonald's because they referred to him as a former employee. That doesn't make sense because during the night 3 cutscene in the first game, when Chris enters his manager's office to kill him, his manager mentions that there's nothing he can do to help. So we know he was working there. Maybe that was a mistake and he wasn't working there, or maybe this is a mistake and they shouldn't have said former employee. But let's just say this game is correct and he was a former employee. Why the fuck was he wearing a McDonald's uniform if he didn't even work there? This story doesn't make any fucking sense and nothing lines up. No, this is not a case of the game being mysterious and, ooh, it's our job as theorist hunters to piece it together. Fuck you. This is just bad writing, like really fucking bad writing. We still haven't even gotten the real bombshell yet, the very important detail I've been talking about throughout this video. But before we can get to it, we have to talk about tonight's threat, Birdie. Birdie did something unique in the last game. What about this one? Nope, she's just a Hamburglar. Enters vents, seal them, that's it. Moving on. Night 4 somehow manages to make even less sense than ever before. We're told that Birdie had gotten damaged, like a crowbar was smashed into her face. Okay, so we know that at this point, Chris had already begun breaking the animatronics. Cool. Now, here's the stupid part. We're told that the police are obviously still investigating the murder. They questioned all the current employees about the incident, and the phone guy tells us, no joke, that they put the employees who were suspects through a lie detector. Fuck the fact that lie detectors can be notoriously inaccurate. Let's talk about the fact that they know it's a former employee. Ding, 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 former. So why the fuck are the current employees suspects? That doesn't even make any fucking sense why they would suspect a current employee of being the murderer when they know it was a former employee. Sure, the guy was wearing a uniform, but they've already established that he was a former employee, aka not a fucking employee anymore. Am I overreacting? Does this story actually make perfect sense and I'm just retarded? I don't think it does. Anyways, the threat on this night is Mayor McCheese. He's just Mac. Goes to the door, close it, what the fuck ever. I know you guys are just interested in this story at this point and how retarded it is. Night 5 phone call. Let's go over it. Mayor McCheese was damaged. Obviously our doing. We're told that today is our last night, yet for some reason we're told that we can come in tomorrow if we really want to. Why? I literally have no idea. And the phone guy literally offers no good explanation whatsoever. It's clear that at this point, the phone guy thinks we're not doing our job well. And to be fair, we really aren't, so that makes sense. Really nothing important in this call, so let's just go over the final threat in this game, Grimace. Grimace, surprisingly, does something different than the other characters. He acts sort of like a phantom balloon bitch from Five Nights at Freddy's 3. He will slowly leave his box, and when he does, he'll appear on a camera. If you see him, close the cameras and he'll reset to his box. If you don't do it fast enough, he'll force your cameras to reboot, which will take a while. So like, just close the cameras. Who gives a fuck? Let's just talk about this stupid fucking story and the stupid fucking important detail I've been teasing for the last half hour. During the night 6 phone call, it's revealed that the phone guy checked the cameras of the warehouse and saw Chris breaking the animatronics, specifically Grimace. He tells us that we need to get out, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we know, no shit, he's pissed, and rightfully so. But hold up. Did you hear what I just said? He checked the cameras and saw us. Doesn't that sound familiar? Oh yeah, it does. Why, you ask? Well, this little tidbit is that super important detail I've been talking about throughout this video. Towards the end of Mac Tonight 1, during the final cutscene, we hear Chris's manager mentioning that the robots are being damaged and that he needs to check the cameras. This would tell me that this exact moment is what he was talking about then. But here's the crazy part. All of that would add up perfectly fine if it wasn't confirmed that the phone guy in the second game wasn't the fucking manager, because he said the manager was already dead. So who the fuck is this guy? And why did the manager say he needed to check the cameras of the warehouse at the end of the first game? This story literally makes no fucking sense whatsoever. There was no thought put into it. I can't piece any of it together because each piece of the fucking puzzle is from a different goddamn box. What the fuck do you expect from me, game? I finally get confident enough to talk about the stories of the games I play in my videos, and then I'm hit with this fucking bullshit. I've spent hours upon hours trying to figure this shit out to find out it's been completely fucking broken from the start. The gears in my brain are turning so fast, I think the whole engine altogether is gonna fucking explode. Thank God I got that out of my system. But that's all Five Nights with Mac Tonight's has to offer. Yes, by the way, before you say anything, I know that there is a third game, but fuck you. It's confirmed to not be canon, so I don't give a fuck about it. This series was an experience I would be okay with never going through again. It wasn't nearly as soul-sucking as Jolly, however, it was definitely enough to cut several years off my lifespan. From horrific gameplay to the worst story I've ever seen in my life, Mac Tonight's truly doesn't have it all. The original FNAF lore, arguably one of the most confusing and frustrating pieces of media ever created, with several retcons, horrendous retellings, frustrating timeline and universe splits, and so many other headaches. Five Nights at Freddy's definitely has a reputation for pretty terrible storytelling, but that's where fan-made remix can come into play. Today, we'll be covering a game called Five Nights at Freddy's Rewritten 87, a remake of Five Nights at Freddy's 2, which is undoubtedly the FNAF game that started the trend of, let's just make the lore of our game as confusing as possible. FNAF Rewritten serves to retell the same story that FNAF 2 did, but in a more concise and enjoyable way, while also making the core gameplay loop of the game better than the original dumpster fire that was FNAF 2 and its gameplay loop. I hope you're excited, because we've got a lot to talk about today. So grab a pet, grab some snacks, and join me today as we dive into the creatively amazing world of FNAF Rewritten 87. FNAF Rewritten 87 opens with a playable cutscene. We see Spring Bonnie standing in front of us. He calls us Gabriel, the child in the Freddy suit, and tells us to follow him. As we walk through the opening credits, we stumble upon a door. We, very creepily, I will add, see Spring Bonnie open the door, only to see Freddy sitting on the table. Oh my god. Walking inside, we get snatched up and stuffed inside of the suit. Who could have seen that one coming? Upon waking up, surprisingly not dead, or actually, who knows, maybe we are actually dead and we're just seeing through our soul at this point, we watch as Freddy and the other characters perform on stage, knowing that there is at least one dead child in one of them. However, I think we can infer that there are probably children inside of Bonnie and Chica as well. We learn about the restaurant shutting down and being bought by a bigger company, only for the whole franchise to be remodeled with safety in mind. Afterwards, we're dropped straight into night one. However, it doesn't begin in the way that most FNAF games begin. This time around, we actually start in a 3D environment, being able to walk around and explore the building to our heart's desires. Except that's a fucking lie because we can't go where Mangle and the puppet are. What? Oh my fucking god. And we can't go into the back rooms. Curiously enough, the only two places I really wanted to go, so that was a bit of a bummer. Hearing the phone ringing, we walk into the back office and really begin the night. Phone guy gives us the typical boring speech nobody really cares about. Let's start talking about what the game changes from the original. I'm sure you could already guess, but this game's building is set up a lot differently than the original. To start, let's talk about the kitchen. The kitchen replaces one of the party rooms from the original, and actually there are plenty of employees-only areas throughout the building that connect various areas. For example, using employee-only hallways, you can walk from the kitchen to the back room, which, yes, you still cannot enter from this angle either. I know, disappointing. These new locations aren't necessarily important per se, but I do think that they're a very nice touch and serve to make this game feel reminiscent of FNAF 2 without just being a direct copy of it, and I like that. The tools at our disposal, however, are exactly the same. Flashlight, cameras, Freddy mask. However, the flashlight does work a bit differently from the original, but I'll explain that more once we start talking about a certain fat bastard. So, who are the threats introduced on this night? Well, to start, of course, we have Toy Bonnie, and Toy Chica, and Toy Freddy. Okay, so this game definitely lays a lot on you. Not that that's a bad thing. If anything, it's a good thing because it gives me more to talk and complain about in this video and gives you guys a longer video because of that. Let's start with Toy Bonnie, the worst character to ever walk the face of the earth. Toy Bonnie does exactly what he does in the original. He'll make his way through the building and into your right vent. Where do you think you're going? Oh my fucking god, dude. Once you see him in your office, put the Freddy mask on, and you'll get to watch him crip walk into your office. The animations in this game, by the way, are really awesome, so get used to it. Toy Chica, while being the hottest character I've ever seen in my life, is pretty much the same as she is in the original. She struts around, my jaw drops like a cartoon character, and my eyes pop out whenever I see her, and my tongue comically falls to the floor, and she makes her way to your left vent. Oh my god, come here, bro. However, before she does, you can see her in the hallway, and literally watch her fent walk into the party room. Seriously, look at the way she initially bends backwards to start walking. That's disgusting. Anyways, once you see her in your vent, put the Freddy mask on. However, unlike the original where she just disappears, much like FNAF 2 Reimagined, Chica does actually come out of the vent like Toy Bonnie and stares into your eyes for a bit. While most people would just wait for her to leave, I actually toss around the thought of taking the mask off and allowing her to start digging in me. I could talk about my attraction to Toy Chica for days on end, but let's move on to talking about the final threat this night introduces, Toy Freddy. The fat ass, whale ass, elephant ass, hippopotamus ass, dump truck ass, island in the ocean ass, massive ass, gargantuan ass, obese ass, folds on folds ass, looking fat ass, fucking fat ass robot. Toy Freddy. Toy Freddy, while Toy Freddy, while morbidly obese if you weren't aware, is actually the first character in this game to do something completely different from the original, which I actually think is really great. A problem I have with FNAF 2 is the amount of characters that all do the same thing. While you could argue that Withered Freddy is supposed to be the main character for FNAF 2, given the fact his face is on the icon, I actually think Toy Freddy is a better fit for the main character, just given the environment the game takes place in and the overall theming of the game. And to have your main character do something as boring as Toy Freddy does, aka just walk through the hall and appear in your office, it just feels so boring and lazy. Toy Freddy in this game is actually just an asshole. If you look on your camera map, you will see 4 cameras that have a thick green ring around them. These cameras each have a breaker box inside of them. Occasionally, Toy Freddy will laugh, signifying that he's about to do something devious like putting his hand in the cookie jar, only to find out that it's empty because his sausage finger ass already put his hand in the cookie jar 36 other times today. When you hear him laugh, he'll appear next to any one of these 4 breaker boxes. You'll have to quickly find which one he appeared at and flash your camera light at him and he'll go away. He's afraid of the light, which would make sense given his build. I'm willing to bet he's the type of guy to sit in the dark at his computer all day playing a World of Warcraft, League of Legends, Valorant, or something really niche like EverQuest. So light being his weakness makes total sense. Also, we know this fat ass plays games all day and does nothing else because playing a video game is literally his mechanic in Ultimate Custom Night. This is canon, guys. He's a fat piece of shit. Scott confirmed it. He actually called me last week to tell me, quote, "Hey yo dog, Toy Freddy is a fat piece of shit, you feel me?" And I was like, fuck yeah dog, I feel you. Anyways, moving on to the last thing I want to talk about before we move on to night 2. The way the camera in this office controls. There's no other real way to describe it except fucking awful. It just feels really bad and awkward to control. It lags behind your mouse, which I'm pretty sure was intentional, but it just feels off. I was trying to click Toy Freddy's nose in my playthrough, which you can see over on my second channel, Dexter Black, and I just literally couldn't get the camera to stop freaking the fuck out while I was trying to do so. On top of that, there's this weird stutter it has when you go near the vents. You'll go to click on a vent to shine your light at it, but before you can, for no reason the camera will just stutter and move even more, even if your mouse isn't moving. It's goofy. I know I nitpick a lot in these videos, but I think controls are something that should be nitpicked. That needs to be nailed. Remember how I said that was the last thing I wanted to talk about before moving on to night 2? Well, I lied. There's actually 2 more things I want to mention. First, I forgot to say the music box is still a thing. I'm not gonna harp on it too much. You guys know how I feel about music boxes. AIDS, poop, and balls. There. The other thing I want to mention is what happens after you beat night 1. You'll get tossed back into the POV of Gabriel standing on stage as Bonnie and Chica perform around you. Hi, 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 hi. Hi, 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 hi. Hi, 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 hi. Hi, hi. Eventually, they stop performing and just stare at you, which is very uncomfortable, especially Chica. Chica's model in this game is like really fucking gross and uncomfortable to look at, so I didn't like that too much. It looks like she doesn't brush her teeth for a living. Eventually, the puppet appears in front of us, the curtains close, and we're booted into night 2. Night 2 starts by allowing you to walk around the building yet again. However, this time, we're actually allowed to go inside the arcade room. And of course, if you couldn't take a guess, there is an arcade machine that we're able to play. In this minigame, we play as a fucking drill car, which is pretty riz. We have to drive around and pop several balloons across the map. After we're done, an exit door will appear and we can end the minigame. However, if you know anything about FNAF minigames, then you'd know there has to be a secret in here somewhere. And a secret there is. After collecting all the balloons, if instead of going into the exit door you continue, you'll find a glitched wall. Driving into it will put you into a normal car. After a bit of driving, we stumble across one of the pizzerias with a crying child outside. Getting out of the car, you'll notice we're playing as Afton. We walk up to the child and presumably murder it, only for the puppet to appear in the reflection of the game, telling us that if we go deeper, it will stop us. Whatever that means. With that, another exit door appears and we're free to leave and continue the night as usual. After that, there's nothing more to do than walk into the office and talk about what new threats this night introduces. And the first threat we'll talk about is Withered Foxy. Nothing much interesting to say about this guy. He works in the exact same way as the original. He'll appear in your hallway every now and then, and all you have to do is flash him a bunch and he'll go away. One thing I do want to mention about him and why I actually like him in this game more than the original is because you flash him with your mouse, which means my poor little control key won't fucking explode. And actually, because you have to use your mouse to flash Foxy, you can actually spam the hallway a lot faster and make him leave sooner. So that's pretty great. The other threat introduced on this night is Mangle, who is probably the most interesting character we've seen so far and is probably the most interesting character in the entire game. Mangle's goal is to get into your office through the main hallway. She doesn't enter the right vent like in the original. Mangle is a very stressful character to deal with. Let me explain why. Once Mangle enters your office, she'll go to your ceiling, but this does not mean she's attacking you yet. While she's on your ceiling, very loud gurgling sounds will be heard, and the TV monitors in your office will start flashing static, Mangle, and the puppet, interestingly enough. After a bit of this, Mangle will drop her head down from the ceiling. At this time, you must put your mask on. Mangle will stay with her head down for a very long time, like much longer than you think she would. Eventually, she'll pull her head back up, but the attack isn't over quite yet. The screens will start to go all nutty again, and during this time, you're allowed to check on things you need to check on, like the music box, Toy Freddy, and Withered Foxy. Soon after, Mangle will drop her head down a second time, requiring you to put the mask on again. After she leaves for the second time, she will finally leave your office, and her attack is finally over. Mangle is easily one of, if not the most stressful character to deal with in this entire game. And one of the main reasons I feel this way is because of her synergy with Toy Freddy. Toy Freddy makes a laughing sound cue when he's about to fuck you with your fuse box. Mangle is so goddamn cock-sucking loud that she will most likely drown out his laugh unless you're paying incredibly close attention.
So I'm not gonna die just because she's in here. That was Toy Freddy. She synergizes with Toy Freddy. She's loud as shit and drowns him out.
But overall, if you can learn her timings, you should be just fine. And in all honesty, from what I noticed, she is pretty forgiving with how much time she gives you to put the mask on after she drops her head. Night 3 time already? Why hello. What goes on tonight? Well, the night starts just like night 2. We can take a walk through the arcade and play another game, except this time around the game in question is fucking dog shit and I didn't beat it because it's bullshit. In it, you play as Bonnie collecting balloons. Who cares about that part? At a certain distance into the sky, you'll see the ceiling is glitching. Jumping into it will turn you into Spring Bonnie and the game gets all dark. Ooh, scary. In this section of the game, you need to grab the 5 kids and put them into what I'm going to assume is the back room where they were killed. You have to do it one at a time, which really just makes my dick hurt, but whatever. Every time you collect a child, shadow Bonnies will appear around the map for you to dodge. If you touch them, the floor will disappear and you'll have to climb back up. After you collect 4 kids, however, is when this game gets bullshit. Another shadow Bonnie will spawn. However, this one looks way fucking creepier and will actually follow you. The funny part? Well, this shadow Bonnie is faster than you in every way and will literally camp your body, making it borderline impossible to make any progress. Seriously, look at what's happening on screen right now and tell me if this looks like any fun at all. Spoiler alert, it's not. I gave up because I was on the verge of sticking a pencil down my urethra and snapping it in half. However, once you deliver the last kid, an exit door will appear, finishing out the minigame. Afterwards, all you have to do is walk to the office and the night section can begin. Phone Guy talks about how the police may have a lead on a missing children's incident. Who cares? I'm glad they're dead. And he also mentions that the animatronics are getting more aggressive. That part, I do care about. So let's talk about the 2 new threats this night introduces. Withered Bonnie is introduced on this night, and he's one of the coolest characters in the entire game. Not because of what he actually does, he's just a super menacing character and I think that's really cool. Withered Bonnie will attack you through the hall rather than the vent like in the original. The animation is insane, get ready for this. When he's in your hall, he will step out in front of your doorway and stare at you. This is easily one of the creepiest things I've ever seen. Then after a bit of time, he'll step into your office and all you have to do is put the mask on until he goes away. Fucking terrifying. I love it. The other character introduced on this night is my favorite official FNAF animatronic ever designed, Withered Chica. She does, literally, the exact same thing as Withered Bonnie, which I do feel is a little lazy. However, she's so fucking cool and easily the creepiest character in this entire game. Seriously, Look at this animation when she's in your office and tell me that's not the creepiest thing you've ever seen. God, I love it so much. But those are the only 2 characters introduced on this night. So far, I do think night 3 is the most boring in terms of what happens. Yes, Mangle is still stressful with Toy Freddy, and I did get the craziest attack combo of all fucking time.
You didn't see me.
Oh my God. Bitches at every angle. I'm getting railed from every angle. What is this? Hi. You are the most terrifying character in this fucking game. Holy shit. That's badass, dude. Oh my God, and look who's still fucking here. But in terms of what Night 3 actually brings to the table, I do feel it is a bit lackluster. I know that Toy Bonnie and Toy Chica do the same thing, but at least in a game like FNAF 2 Reimagined, while Bonnie and Chica variants did do the same thing, at least the Wizards and the toys attacked differently from each other. The only thing that's different between the variants this time around is where they come from to get into your office. Night 4. Fuck this. Terrible character introduction. Let's just jump right into it. To begin, of course, we walk through the arcade and play yet another minigame. That is, unless you're me. Since I didn't complete the bullshit minigame from night 3, I couldn't play the minigame on night 4. Had I known that was going to be the case, I would have forced myself to beat night 3's minigame. But fuck me, I guess I'm locked out of all the minigames for the rest of my playthrough. But what actually happens in this minigame? Well, I'm honestly glad I never did play this minigame because it appears to be just as frustrating as the last. In it, you play as who I think is Mangle. You're tasked with finding 5 balloon boys around the map. Afterwards, you move on to the next round and holy shit! It says there's 20 fucking rounds. I think I'm gonna shoot myself. Luckily for us, actually collecting the balloon boys isn't the real objective. Occasionally, a crying child will appear from the ground, and these are the real characters you want to collect. After collecting your first one, a shadow Bonnie will appear on the map. Touching one will cause the timer at the top of the screen to decrease very quickly, so don't touch them. However, it appears that a crying child spawning only has a small chance to happen every time the map loads, so using them to lose faster to get the level to respawn might actually be an alright strategy for collecting all the kids. Eventually, after collecting a few, as I'm sure you could have already guessed, Spring Dick appears and moves at light speed and camps your body for the rest of the fucking minigame, constantly draining your time at a rate faster than your mom drains all the nutrients out of the buffet line. Once you finally collect all of the crying children, the next level will show all the heads of the characters with missing children stuffed inside of them, and an exit door will appear. Something I noticed specifically about the Golden Freddy head is just how hard it is to see in comparison to the other masks. I'm sure this has some sort of symbolism, but I'm just playing the game, bro. You figure it out. Anyways, after touching the exit door, you walk to the office and it's time for the night section to begin. This night introduces 2 new threats. Let's start with the threat that is so annoying you'll want to light your PC on fire and then throw it in a river. Balloon Boy. Balloon Boy has somehow been made even more annoying than in the original. Except not annoying as in his mechanics, that's actually easier than the original. I mean, his laugh is so much fucking worse. The way he works is pretty simple. He'll attack through either of your vents. Instead of putting the mask on like in the original, you'll instead have to spam flash your light at him. Do that enough and he'll eventually literally run away like a little baby pissed diarrhea boy. Obviously, if you don't, he jumps into your office, steals your shit, and Foxy will fuck you since you won't be able to flash him. The other character introduced on this night is Withered Freddy. What does he do? Well, let me tell you, I have no fucking idea. What do you mean you have no idea, Dexter? Didn't you play the game? Yes, I did. However, this series and this Dexter White video specifically, I wanted to try something a little different in the video creation process. Typically, after I finish recording a black series, if I think the game was worthy of a white video, I'll put it on my white list. Depending on how much I either liked or disliked the game, will determine how high up on the list the game will go. And when it comes time to script a Dexter White video, I choose the video at the top of the list and write the entire script in one sitting. I feel this leads to the beginnings of my scripts being really hard to get into, and I feel that it also makes the amount of energy I have near the end of the script drop off. So I thought for this game I'd try something new. After recording each Dexter Black video on this game, I would write the script specifically for that section. That way, I'm not writing a lot in one sitting and I get a fresh reset every day, which I've noticed has been making me a lot happier with the script in general. However, this does bring up an interesting issue that I've only noticed now while writing and talking about Night 4. While yes, Withered Freddy was introduced, for some reason, he literally never attacked me once throughout the entire night. So I quite literally have no idea what he does and I can't really talk about it. So this is a little awkward. I'm gonna consult the wiki real quick. Just give me a second. Let me just 87, okay, and Night 4. Okay, here we go. Let me just we'll go to the side of the hallway on the well, fuck. I really thought he was gonna do something cool, but no. He does the exact same thing as Withered Bonnie and Withered Chica. Just walks to your hall and eventually goes into your office where you have to put the mask on. Damn it, I really thought they'd do something interesting with this guy, and it's honestly really disappointing that they didn't. I had Withered Freddy appear in my hall multiple times throughout my Night 4 playthrough. However, never once did he attempt to step into my office. If I had to guess why, I'd say it's probably because when he was in the hallway, every other character at the same time decided to be there or be in my office. Oh my God, fucking party in the hallway! Party in the hallway! Let's just fucking not do this. Party in the fucking office! Hello! Hello, everybody at the same fucking time. Hi, guys. Fuck off. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. We're at Night 5 already? What a nice, totally calm and non-stressful ride it's been so far, right? Yeah, no, not really, but let's continue. To start, of course, we have another minigame to talk about, and this one is by far the most frustrating and annoying one yet. In it, we play as the puppet, tasked with giving gifts and then giving life, just like the original. However, unlike the original, where the minigame was quick and easy, this minigame is long and painful. You can see several balloons going from side to side across the screen. You can move along the top of the screen as well, and you're supposed to drop down on the crying children to give them their gift. However, you can't touch the balloons or the balloon boys at the bottom of the screen or you will be reset to the top. Can you see where this is going? This minigame relies on luck, and you just fucking waiting for a good opening to drop down. And get this, as it goes on, it gets even worse. Every time you get a gift, a shadow Bonnie will appear in the balloons. These shadow Bonnies will move around and literally push the fucking balloons when they touch them, making the waiting for timings part even more fucking annoying. And you have plenty of them in this game. This game can take several minutes depending on your luck. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if it took someone over 15 minutes to complete this bullshit. After giving the gift to the last kid, the screen goes dark and we're told to give life, putting the character masks on each of the children, with the puppet eerily watching in the background. After giving life, the puppet goes on a 2-decade rant. She gets upset that we keep playing these games, learning what happened to the children, even at its attempts to stop us. She says she has to kill us because apparently us knowing will make them truly die. She says this because obviously she gave them life in the forms of the animatronics. But I'd argue to say that this is a fate even worse than death, Miss fucking Puppet. And I'm willing to bet that freeing the kids and letting them actually die is miles better than having them live in the place where they fucking died for the rest of eternity. So hop off my dick. Before we jump into the next section, there's something I want to mention that I found while roaming around this night. Well, actually 3 things. The first is just how many fucking puppet plushies have been accumulating around the building. Like, there are literally so many of them. The next thing I want to mention is that it was this night that I found you can knock Balloon Boy over, which has probably now become my favorite part of this game. Oh my God, I can knock his stupid ass over. And finally, the real big thing I wanted to talk about is something I found in one of the party rooms. Please, can someone tell me, what the fuck is this thing? There's an endoskeleton you can find in one of the party rooms. I don't know if it's here every night or just this one since I never checked, but tell me, who the fuck is this supposed to be? It never moves and you can't interact with it, but I just thought I'd point this out in case anybody can tell me what the hell this thing is. Anyways, how about we talk about the actual night section now? There's not much to talk about in terms of new threats, but there is something pretty interesting. At the end of the puppet's monologue, she said that tonight would be different than the nights before. She said that we've done a good job stopping her, but not tonight. The puppet gains a new form of attack on this night, and it is so fucking annoying. Remember all those shadow Bonnies that are life-ruining from the minigames? Yeah? Well, now they're in the night segments. Have fun, asshole. They show up on your cameras. Several of them, like a fuck ton of them, will appear. They will block your camera buttons, your flashlight button, and your music box wind button. When you click on one of them, they will go away. But if there's even one of them just barely touching the button with their head, their foot, their hand, even just gently plopping the tip of their dick right on top of one of your buttons, you won't be able to interact with it until you get rid of them. And you better believe that when you hear Toy Freddy's fat ass laugh, your blood pressure is gonna spike to 12K as you try to remove all these little fucking shadow bitches from the camera.
Oh my god.
But that really is the only new thing added to this night. Of course, this night is much harder than night 4, and yes, it's still just as overwhelming with characters constantly jumping all over your shit and grinding in your office constantly throughout the entire night. Thank you for asking. Night 6 time! Holy fucking shit, is there a lot to talk about here. I was honestly expecting this video to be close to 20 minutes, but nope. We're going way over today. So, it was at this moment I learned that in order to play Night 6, I had to beat all the minigames from the previous nights. Fuck me. So, I did that, and now here we are. This night begins with a cutscene, talking about what I can only assume to be the bite of 87. Or the bite of 83? I think this one is 83, I'm pretty sure. I literally don't know the FNAF lore at all, it's so fucking awful. In this cutscene, we play as Jeremy Fitzgerald, going into a play area to retrieve a Freddy plushie. Of course, this play area is where Mangle is kept, and it's at this moment we notice that Mangle has the toy in her mouth. Attempting to go get it, she crawls away into the slide. Following behind her, she goes down the slide and we lose sight of her, only to see that she's placed the toy in a very convenient spot.
Ooh, convenient.
Going to grab the toy, Mangle swoops down on us like a pedophile in the park and bites the shit out of us, killing us instantly. Jeremy is then fished up by Old Man Consequences. He explains how people who have died unfairly don't get reeled up to the surface and are forced to stay underneath the ocean until they get peace. Even though we as Jeremy died unfairly, he explains that he made an exception for us because we died due to the supernatural. He also knows that we haven't finished what we started. This conversation with him goes on for a very long time, so let's just skip to the interesting part. We come back to the building. Of course, we're playing as Michael, not Jeremy. Just wanted to make that clear in case anyone was confused as to what was going on. We are indeed Michael Afton in this game. We enter through the back of the building through a vent and go to walk back to the office. However, before we do that, I want to point out that for some reason, Toy Freddy is not on stage and is instead standing in the same party room we saw that weird endoskeleton in previously. Oh, and of course, there's yet another minigame to play. Heading into the arcade, we can begin. This time we play as Chica and we have to bring a bunch of cupcakes to a table. You'll notice that this time around, there is a lack of Shadow Bonnies. That is, until you collect all the cupcakes. If you head up afterwards, you'll see the stick figure Jeremy pointing you towards a wall. Walking into it, we get teleported to a room with several platforms. It's in this room where the big bitch Shadow Bonnie is present. If he touches you, you get teleported back to the cupcake table and will have to come back. In this big platform room, there are characters from every other minigame you've seen so far, retrieving one of the missing children from each, giving them gifts, and then finally giving them life once more. The puppet tells us we need to stay out of its way, and an exit door appears for us to leave. Candy Cadet thought it'd be a great idea to block my fucking path to the office. He speaks to us, but it almost seems as though the puppet is speaking to us through him, given exactly what he says to us.
Congratulations, Michael.
Oh, hey, Candy.
You won a free story. No coins required.
Why do you know my name? Hey, Candy Cadet.
Michael, you should have never come back.
Oh.
I told you to leave us alone.
Oh, is that the fucking marionette?
I'm happy. We are all happy. Do not try to take them away.
You're not all
Jeremy
happy.
tried. You do not want to be like Jeremy. Right, Michael?
Oh yeah, Jeremy got bit.
If you answer that phone, if you listen to Jeremy, I will have to stop you. I know there is good in you. I know you are sorry. Please leave.
Oh, okay. You can't stop me, bro. After this, we find a different way to the office, and the night begins. Nothing new to talk about here, it's just a harder version of Night 5. That is, until we see a certain shadow rabbit in our cameras and the building goes dark. The lights come back on, and the phone begins to ring. Every camera has too many balloons on it, and our Freddy mask has been replaced by a Foxy one. There's no better way for me to explain to you what happens next. It's much better if you just watch for yourself.
What were you even doing? You really think this is that much? Like the one sick with nothing insulting enough? My son is dead, Michael. People pity me. And those who pity me are blaming me. Have you told one of my dreams? The little face of my restaurant? So many are going to think I failed. They'll think something's broken or wrong with my work. His machine built this kid. Did he not prioritize safety? I'm sorry! I didn't account for my idiot son shoving his little brother down its mouth! Warlord's point that caused this was no fault of mine. You are almost an adult. You deserve to take full accountability for this. All of it. You know, I'll never let go of this, Michael. You've ruined my life. I'm going to tear yours apart.
So, Michael has an episode, and Mangle is able to slip into the office and attack him. But hold up. What if I told you Mangle didn't get him? Michael comes too. He survived by jumping into one of the vents. Now it's time for us to make our grand escape. We crawl through the vents into the kitchen where we see withered Chica. Fucking terrifying, by the way. Sneaking around her, we enter the hallway and a chase with withered Freddy begins. Withered Bonnie following close behind as well. We run through the back room, interestingly seeing that weird endoskeleton from before, but we don't really have time to focus on that. We close the door to the back room, but it's not long before withered Foxy starts to chase us as well. Getting into the main party room, a sign falls and blocks Foxy from being able to get us. We try to run to the exit, only for two balloon boys to block the way. Before we can think of what to do, the puppet jumps out of her box and yet another chase occurs. Choosing to run to the emergency exit, Toy Freddy blocks our path. Running back into the main hallways, Toy Bonnie and Chica spot us and the chase continues. Running down the hall, Mangle falls from the ceiling as we make a sharp left into the arcade room. Exiting, Toy Freddy greets us on the other side and we make it to the exit. Fenced off, we seemingly have nowhere to go. Hearing the puppet pounding on the door behind us, we jump behind some pizza boxes to hide. As the puppet breaks her way outside, the sound of police sirens can be heard as the puppet cowers and hides before she can be seen. We look down at the logbook we took, previously owned by Jeremy, and Five Nights at Freddy's Rewritten 87 comes to a close. While yes, this is where the main story ends, there's still something super interesting I want to talk about, and that is this game's extras menu, which actually isn't even a menu. It's basically just a 3D environment you can roam around and explore. The reason I want to talk about it, well, you can re-enter the pizzeria to explore, and around it you can find several Faz tokens. Using these tokens, you can go to the arcade room and have Candy Cadet tell you a story. The story he tells consists of an infamous cave in the woods that everybody is afraid to enter. One day, a child stumbles upon it, and a beast convinces him to go inside the cave with him. The child never exits the cave. Several children entered the cave and never returned. A sorcerer found the cave with the children and banished the beast from inside, locking all the children in the cave with a seal, keeping them safe inside from the beast that trapped them there. The children had the desire to leave, but the sorcerer couldn't let them without breaking the seal and letting the beast back inside. If it wasn't obvious, this story is obviously a metaphor for the missing children's incident. The cave is Freddy's, the beast is William, and the sorcerer is the puppet. This little extra thing you can do with Candy Cadet is honestly super fun, and I think it's such a unique thing to add to an extras menu. Finding these tokens and discovering this story is such a fun experience, and you can see me do it over on my second channel, Dexter Black. But with that, as far as I'm aware, that is all FNAF Rewritten 87 has to offer. Overall, I think this game is nothing short of a masterpiece. It does a great job at making FNAF 2 feel like the overwhelming game Scott originally wanted it to be. The way the story is told is incredible, the graphics and animations are phenomenal, I love the character redesigns, and I really enjoy the mechanical changes where there were some. I would highly recommend you give this game a try, you will not regret it.